because so little progress has again been made by governments in the fight against global warming.
We've lost time. We can still act, and we have to act quickly.
Sir David King heads the Climate Crisis Advocacy Group and is a former UK government special representative on climate change.
What is happening on the ground is much worse than the climate scientific community were predicting. The Arctic Circle region has now heated up to 3 degrees centigrade above the pre-industrial level, much more double than the 1.5 average for the rest of the planet. Greenland sits in the Arctic Circle, and as Greenland ice melts, global sea levels will rise by 7 meters. If we look at what is happening in the permafrost regions around the North Pole, there's enough methane trapped up there that if it was all released in 20 years, temperatures would rise 5 to 8 degrees centigrade. These several disasters is what will happen, and it will trigger other tipping points to go.
And he is very critical of UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's decision not to travel to Egypt for COP27. President Biden will be there. The main news again. The mayor of Kiev says 40% of the city's households are without running water after a series of Russian attacks in the early hours of Monday. British Home Secretary Suella Braverman has admitted sending government documents to her personal email address on at least 6 occasions over 2 months. And Eurozone inflation reached a record 10.7% in October, up from a previous record of 9.9% in September. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
After the USDA unveiled its updated roommate food pyramid earlier this week, Department of Agriculture spokesman Michael Lowry spoke to Onion reporters about just how many servings of someone else's food roommates should be consuming on a day-to-day basis.
Under the new guidelines, roommates should eat at least 4 portions of someone else's grains per day, including 1 to 2 cups of already opened cereal. Of course, this is all in addition to the 8 to 16 swigs of milk and orange juice spaced out over a few days.
Lowry emphasized that many aspects of the new roommate food pyramid are unchanged from the previous version, including a recommended daily intake of 24 ounces of lunch meat straight from the bag and 5 to 7 weekly finger scoops of Erica's peanut butter.
Remember to limit your intake of sugar and sweets from half-open containers, especially if they're Jessica's, because she'll definitely notice.
For more on this story, check this week's Onion Review.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
Hey, welcome to Free Talk Live, the Halloween edition of the program. Phones are open. And the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Arya. And man, if I had thought about it, I would have, worn my costume. I've been at work all day, though, but I still had time. I could have gone home and changed all that. I went as Kamek this year.
What is Kamek?
Kamek? I don't know. It's the blue-robed sorcerer from the Mario franchise.
This must be after my time.
What?
Really? I don't know, Ian.
Blue-robed sorcerer?
Haven't you ever played Mario and Luigi? Mario Party?
I think I played it one time.
Well, Kamek originated before then. Like, going all the way back to Super Mario World, Kamek was in that one. It's the one that shoots the little thing that turns blocks into, like, Koopa shells and mushrooms and just random stuff.
Yeah, it's actually after my time. I got out of Mario, basically, in the Super Nintendo.
That was the Super Nintendo
I know. I never had a Super Nintendo, so that was, like, the end of the line.
And it was the big bad in Yoshi's Island, Super Mario World 2.
So it's a bad guy.
Yes.
Okay.
But it was a really basic costume. You really couldn't tell. Yeah.
Okay.
It was just a blue robe and a blue hat. I could have easily been Rosalina. Just throw me in like a blonde emo wig, and it would have been exactly the same costume.
Rosalina is definitely after your time. Yeah.
Who's that?
Rosalina debuted in Super Mario Galaxy. Really interesting character. One of the more interesting female Mario characters.
Another bad person?
No, she's a good guy.
Okay.
But most Mario characters, they tend to be very flat, very safe, very Yeah.
Nintendo is sort of, that's what they were known for, was safe for many years until they finally had, Mortal Kombat and the outrage about not putting blood in that game. Eventually they finally caved and started allowing more mature titles on their systems.
You would think, but they also had the first transvestite character in video games.
Okay.
Who was that?
When was that?
That would be Birdo. That Doki Doki Panic / Super Mario Brothers 2, going all the way back to the NES. Yeah, Birdo was...
That was a transvestite?
Yes. The official instruction manual says something to the effect of Birdo is a boy that thinks he's a girl or something like that.
That's funny.
And
I just remember Birdo having like duck lips all the time. Has like a little tube for a mouth.
Yeah, the big nose with one giant nostril.
This was the guy that shot eggs at you,
yes.
right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was Birdo.
That.
I mean, they would phrase it differently today, but Nintendo was weird, especially in Japan. There was this one video game, I don't remember now what it was called, but you had to prove that Birdo was a girl or something. This was like back in the early 90s as well. Yet Birdo was caught trying to use the women's restroom or something like that, and you had to prove that Birdo was a girl. And in so doing, you searched through Birdo's house and you found something that, quote, vibrated.
Oh.
And what was it?
This was Nintendo back in like the early 90s.
A Japanese game?
It did not come to the United States. But yes. I mean, so they were always very risque in unusual ways. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. They were super clean. You couldn't reference Christianity. The Bible was in the original Zelda, but they changed it to the Magic Book or something like that. And they removed the cross from it.
Yeah, I'm not like, what's the term for the people that are obsessed with Japanese culture? Is it weeaboo?
Weebs. Weeaboo.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not one of those people, but I have visited Japan. It was a few years ago because Roger Ver, who is a longtime sponsor from Bitcoin.com, lives part of the year in Japan, and so Mark and I had wanted to go there. So, I've learned a little bit here and there about Japanese culture, and they're a very strangely repressed group of people.
That's what I've always heard about, like, Korea, but then, like, the Korean pop stars are totally just as scandalous as ours. Yeah, sometimes.
Well, I mean, Americans are repressed as well, right? So there's a lot of repression amongst American culture, specifically Bible Belt, religion in general, organized religion to be more specific, oppressing people regarding sexuality.
Yeah, but people act like Western culture is just, devolving into crazy deviants.
Well, and that's part of what happens when you repress people, right? So when you put pressure on somebody and say, oh, well, you can't express yourself as a trans person, or you can't express yourself as a, whatever it is that they're, or you can't have this kind of sex, or whatever it is that the issue is that's being repressed.
You end up like, I don't know his name, Pelosi's husband.
You end up acting out. Yeah, or you hide it, and also that repression results in what you hide becoming more likely deviant than you otherwise would have become had you were able to express yourself and not hide from the world, so to speak.
It often manifests in hatred as well.
It's like self-hatred?
Well, it's not universally true, but many of the people who are outwardly homophobic, who loud and scream the most about how much they hate gay people or trans people or whatever, it's because they have attraction to trans people or gay people or something like that. So
We've seen it so many times. You see it with the politicians a lot, especially when they get caught.
Oh yeah, that guy last year who was like anti-gay, and he got caught with pictures of him like wearing lingerie at like a club. I don't remember his name.
And then I think he lost the re-election. He was that young guy that was in the wheelchair.
Yeah, he was very young.
Yeah, I don't remember his name. But
it sounds like he deserved to lose re-election. Because if you want to, wear lingerie, that's fine.
Go for it, bro.
Yeah, but don't demonize people for doing that and not hiding it.
And his response was, this is just the left trying to cancel me. It's not like I was wearing lingerie doing gay things. It was just me and my cousin playing around.
Okay, that's doing gay things.
Oh, whoa, wait a minute. The thing with his cousin was even further.
Oh, yeah. It was him touching his cousin in bed.
It was more than that.
Video of that.
It was more than that.
Wait, how could it be more than that?
Madison Cawthorn was his name.
Madison was his name.
Madison's a strange name for a man.
But it was originally a male name, I think.
Really?
But it's like Ashley was originally a male name.
Okay, well, anyway, he got there was pictures that came out of him on a cruise ship, apparently. This was where he was wearing the lingerie, and he was with just 2 other women. They were on a stage doing some sort of show, like, you know, risque kind of show on a cruise ship. And that's kind of how he played it off. Oh, it was just all in good fun or whatever. And that's fine, you know.
I mean, look, if you're with 2 hot women and you're wearing lingerie, that
they were older. Okay. Whatever.
I mean, whatever.
Whatever your taste is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't judging the dude for it, but certainly people in the media were, and understandably, because he's a hypocrite.
Yeah, because of the hypocrisy of it. Like, he was all no deviant homosexuals around my parts in the public.
Yeah. Then what came out later was a video of him. I believe he was naked with his cousin. And there was like some...
His same-sex cousin or opposite-sex cousin?
Yeah.
Same-sex cousin.
I mean, it's not a huge detail. I'm just curious.
Yeah, and there was some kind of simulated sexual activity going on.
Yeah, I probably can't say it on the radio.
Yeah, we can't get much more detail.
A movement, a brisk movement.
But it was very... I mean, it wasn't per se graphic, as in the camera wasn't close up, but the camera was far away from it, but you were still able to clearly see the movement that was being made of this representative, U.S. representative, on top of his cousin.
And his response was, "Come on, people. This is the left trying to cancel me. It's just me hanging out, playing around with my cousin. Everyone needs to get over this right away."
Yeah,
I've got to look this up now.
And then, of course, you probably, if you look hard enough, you could probably find the video. It was being shared around on social media for some time, and like, this is just one of the most recent examples. Years ago, there was and I don't remember this congressman's name or whatever, but there was the classic story of the anti-homosexual congressperson who was caught trying to play footsie with one of the congressional aides in the bathrooms. So, you know how in most, it's probably this way in women's bathrooms too, Bonnie, but in most men's bathrooms in the stalls, there's like space underneath the stalls, right?
That's so strange too.
That's a really weird way to flirt.
It's apparently it's a gay thing. Apparently, it's like for the gays that like to meet and have sex in bathrooms, which is a thing.
Well,
for
what
some
if
of them.
it turned out to be wrong? Wouldn't it make more sense to just like say something than put your foot under the stall
I
where
don't know
the
how
other
it
person
works.
is?
That's just what I've heard, that's a thing, and so he got caught. So much hypocrisy, and there have been so many stories like this. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. You can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. We're here live on Halloween for you. And with you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Aria.
We started out talking about Halloween costumes, and we have in the past. I don't know if we've done it every year, but we've certainly done it before, where we will go through the year's top Halloween costumes. And I do have a list, but it's not the usual one. Normally we get like the breakdown of men's costumes and women's costumes, and then there's like another category for kids' costumes. I don't have that here in this rankings. This is just an overall top 19 costumes of 2022 according to Google.
This is like the most popular ones?
I presume maybe
most
it's
bought, like
I don't know if it's by purchase or if it's by search.
It's probably a little wonky because a lot of people, like me, I'm a vampire tonight just from wearing black clothes I already own and makeup I already owned. So it's probably a little wonky because of that.
Sure.
I feel like you phoned in being a vampire.
What does that mean?
Ooh, zing.
Yeah.
Zing.
You don't have a cape or...
Yeah, she's saying we
You last minute, like...
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, they didn't count me as a vampire because I didn't go and buy a vampire outfit from Spirit Halloween.
Yeah.
So...
Spirit, don't get me started on that. I made my own costume, though. I didn't make it. I assembled it myself, I guess is what I'm saying. I didn't go to Spirit or Amazon or whatever and buy a Chemic costume. Because
you did it the proper way.
Yeah, one of those probably wouldn't exist. As a result, I ended up with, like... the actual robe ended up getting shipped to Illinois for some reason. I don't know why. No. So last minute, we had to do what we had to do, and I ended up in a bathrobe for Halloween. But, I mean, it worked.
It worked.
It did.
That's cool.
I felt like I was in a bathrobe. And if you looked closely, you could tell I was in a bathrobe. But because of the hat, it was less noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
We also didn't buy Trinity and Neo costumes to go to a party we went to. Ian just already has this long Matrix-looking jacket coat.
I've had a trench coat since I was in high school,
That's
and I was
leather.
like an angry teenager.
See, that would have been cool. I would have loved to have seen you as Neo and Trinity.
There's a picture.
Because that fits. That fits the two of you very well.
And
I would
I
have liked
just
to have
had
seen it.
black sunglasses. So, nobody's going to count that in any statistics. That's all I was saying.
Right. And according to Google Trends, I guess, and this is being reported in various different places, the number one costume. Should we go from 10 to 1 and skip the top 19, or should we go for all 19?
Whichever one you think is best. But another cool idea, costumes that I wanted to do someone who lost all their money in NFTs, but I couldn't figure out how to make that into a concise costume.
That sounds difficult.
But it would have been fun, right? Who are you? I invested everything in NFTs.
You could just be a hobo, like make your outfit a hobo, and then when people are like, "Oh, are you a hobo?" You'd be like, "Well, no, I'm somebody who lost all my money with NFTs."
Would you like to see my bored ape?
You could be like really jaded and have a bored ape with like on a T-shirt with the circle and the line, like the cross out line through it, and like you're really angry about it or something like that.
That'd have been good.
Maybe. Jaded NFT user,
now like new hater or whatever.
All right, so here's the top 19 costumes of 2022, according to Google at least. Number 19, Batman. Number 18,
that's surprising.
Angel. 17, Doll. 16, Chucky. Chucky's back.
I saw a girl as Chucky at the Wendy's parking lot the other day.
Number 15, a pumpkin. 14, Hocus Pocus. The movie series came back with a sequel recently, so I guess that.
Did they have the same witches in the?
Yes.
Yep, the same actresses too.
Number 13, 1980s. So sort of like a whole general like theme, probably inspired by Stranger Things, for instance. Number 12, Vampire. 11, Clown. 10, Harley Quinn, a character from DC Comics.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I wish the popularity of Harley Quinn would fade away.
Start to wane.
I mean, she was the Stockholm Syndrome abuse victim that has been glorified by the media. It's almost sickening how much people look up to her and respect her. It's an interesting character. I'm like, she's a psychopath, abuse victim.
Yeah, I find that really, really creepy and weird, and I don't like it at all. But also, her movies were supposed to have sucked, and anything I've seen about them was like, oh, that looks absolutely insufferable, but I've never watched one.
I've never seen any of it. I heard the one they remade was better when they remade it. Whatever that one was called.
Bird of Prey? I don't know.
No, the one about the group. Harley Quinn's like in a group of...
Oh, yeah, where
criminals.
it was all the bad guys. Yeah, that was it. What was it called?
What was it?
Something Squad.
Suicide Squad.
Yeah, apparently they made one. It was terrible, and then they just made it again or something with a different director. And
I haven't seen any of those. The only things I know about Harley Quinn I learned from Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, the video games, which, you know, they give you a lot of backstory and character descriptions and stuff like that. And I think they had some audio tapes of an actress pretending to be Harley Quinn, interviewing the Joker or whatever. It's just horrifying, this character arc. And it's like, then you have other people who idolize her relationship with the Joker. It's like, yeah, I mean, if you want to have this psychopathic relationship, go for it.
Some people are into that. Number 9 on the list here of most popular Halloween costumes in 2022, Cowboy. 8, Cheerleader. 7, Rabbit. 6, Pirate. Number 5, Fairy. Number 4, Stranger Things. Apparently it has its own category. So 1980s was number 13, and Stranger Things was number 4.
I've never seen a single episode.
It's a good show.
It's pretty good,
it's
but
good.
I haven't seen the latest season.
Yeah, I haven't seen the
Not that
latest one
interested.
either. But if you,
Because the third was just okay.
Or
the second, I don't know.
It is. I really liked the second season, but the show, it's the 80s nostalgia thing, right? Like the 80s is now 4 decades roughly old at this point, and so the people who grew up in the 80s, they're all into this stuff. And so,
that took me a minute.
Part of the fun of the show for those of us that are in that age range, those of us who grew up in the 80s, is like seeing things that you kind of grew up with, right? Like, I remember, I don't know if it was the first episode or whatever, but there was this one radio, like an actual physical product that I remember being in my house back in the day. And like they got a lot of stuff right as far as like the production design and the way the show looks is very, very accurate.
So is it
time period?
The first season is definitely worth watching, even if you don't watch any other one.
Is it set in the 80s?
It's set in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, so everything's happening in the 80s, and it's just fun. That brings a level of fun to it. It's well acted, and it's got it's kind of spooky. It's got like some horror elements to it.
The kids are all really good actors. They're not annoying.
Yeah.
I knew it made Master of Puppets resurge in popularity again. That's the Metallica song.
Yeah, okay.
But that's the extent of my knowledge
It's
about
got
it.
the 80s music, of course.
It has like
and
conspiracy stuff, like it like references MK Ultra and stuff.
It's well written.
Not
And
that that's a conspiracy,
It's
that's-
definitely something that'll keep you watching, I think.
Okay.
Number 3 on this list, Dinosaur, 2, Spider-Man, and the number 1 costume of 2022. Anyone want to guess?
Oh, a doctor? No. That's too basic.
I'm trying to think of any movies that came out.
No, it's keep it basic. It's going to be a simple thing that's always on the list.
See,
No, wait.
A ghost?
Surprisingly, Ghost wasn't on the list. It's Witch, number 1, the number 1 costume of 2022, according to Google at least.
See, we live in a college town, so like my perception of people on Halloween is skewed toward like really slutty costumes because that's what I see most of the time.
Slutty nurse, slutty fill in the
Playboy
blank.
bunny.
Yeah. All right, more coming up here in moments. Of course, the numbers on actual costume sales are probably different.
Does this ever happen to you? Moments after you're introduced to someone, you forget his or her name. It's a common faux pas you'll want to avoid, especially if you're a job seeker. And even if you're not, here's a tip. As you are being introduced, and while you're still shaking hands, smiling, and making eye contact, say the person's name aloud. Not only does that make a deposit in your memory bank, it acknowledges the other person. And that is more than a nuance, as is maintaining eye contact. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important. Cutting through the clutter rather than blending into the blah, blah, blah will help you connect better, no matter what the conversation. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The mayor of Kyiv says 40% of the city's householders are without running water after a series of Russian attacks in the early hours of Monday. More than 250,000 homes also have no electricity after the Kremlin's forces targeted infrastructure in the Ukrainian capital. FSN's Sergio Olmos is there.
Russia has now hit Ukraine on 3 Mondays out of 4 this month, hitting infrastructure, trying to constrict the lifeblood of cities. It is quite cold in Ukraine, and it is getting colder. It's already the heating season. These attacks on infrastructure meant to make it miserable, to try to force Ukraine to a negotiating position.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says he will continue to try and revive an international agreement with the Kremlin on grain shipments from Ukraine, aimed at heading off a food crisis in the developing world this winter. Moscow pulled out of the deal over the weekend, accusing Ukraine of drone strikes on Russian naval vessels. Britain's Home Secretary Suella Braverman has admitted sending government documents to her personal email address at least 6 times over the last 2 months. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is under fire over his decision to reappoint her to a role from which she resigned just days before he came to power. On Monday, the Home Secretary was also forced to defend her plans on immigration to lawmakers, as FSN's Sally Patterson reports from our London bureau.
Writing to the Home Affairs Select Committee, Home Secretary Suella Braverman apologised for breaching security rules and claimed the migration policy proposals she'd sent to her personal phone did not contain any information relating to national security and were not marked top secret. The opposition Labour Party claims the letter leaves more unanswered questions over her, quote, irresponsible conduct, and have called on her to resign.
The man who allegedly attacked Paul Pelosi, husband of the Speaker of the House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi, has been charged with assault and attempted kidnapping. David DePape is accused of breaking into the Pelosi family residence in San Francisco early on Friday, brandishing a hammer and shouting, "Where is Nancy?" Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro is yet to concede after losing Sunday's presidential election. Meanwhile, a number of world leaders have congratulated Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva on his election win. From Rio, where he's on special assignment, FSN's Will Denzelo.
Right-wing Bolsonaro hasn't commented since his defeat was announced, but close ally Damares Alves tweeted that the election was lost, but the love for the nation remains. Leftist Lula, who served as president from 2003 to 2010, will take over the presidency in the new year and has vowed to work to unite Brazil after a deeply polarising election.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. It is the Halloween episode of Free Talk Live, and if you have anything, Halloween related you want to talk about, honestly, I haven't seen much in the news about Halloween this year. A lot of times there's some kind of story, like about the hell houses or whatever. There's something that makes it into the news, and I haven't seen anything.
I recently learned about an entirely new level of Hell House.
Really?
I wish I could remember what it was called. I'm going to have to look into it or look it up
see
again.
if you can dig that up, because I've always found those stories to be really interesting.
Is a hell house the same as just like a haunted house?
No,
this is a
no.
This is a torture chamber.
So a hell house is generally something operated by an ultra right-wing Christian church. Yeah, it's like they want to try to save you, basically. So they put together this horrifying experience, and then at the end, Satan's involved, and there's like actual scenes of hell, right, to try to scare you into becoming a Christian.
And is that what you were talking about?
No, I was thinking the Judgment House is what those
Judgment
things
House,
are.
is that what they're called?
And I can tell you a story about one of them because
I bet you can. You grew up in the Bible Belt, right?
Yeah, my dad.
I want to get into it. Hold
Okay.
on. But I also want to tell you about Bitcoin.com, because that is where you can go to learn about cryptocurrency, and it's always a good time to do that. It's never too late to get into crypto like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. So head over to Bitcoin.com and click Get Started at the top of the page, and you will find yourself in some introductory information. You really ought to get some of these ideas down. There's some new concepts involved here. But once you do that, you can then utilize cryptocurrency more effectively. You can understand it better and get started. Click Get Started at the top of the page, Bitcoin.com. All right, so tell me your Judgment House story.
Well, there's a few things to know about the South and Christianity in the South before we really get into that,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Because if you're a Southern Baptist, you don't celebrate Halloween. You
No.
do celebrate Halloween, but you're not supposed to. You don't talk about how you actually celebrate
You
Halloween.
call it like a harvest fest at the church in the
Yes.
gymnasium.
So you do still have Halloween costumes and Halloween parties that people go to, and some of them are actually called Halloween parties. You do occasionally go trick-or-treating, but the main
Would you be
event-
allowed to go with the devil's outfit or something like
No,
that?
one time-
Not to a church, no.
One time I went to a church Halloween party event where I was like, I don't know what to be. I'm just going to be a ghost. And I put like a sheet over myself, and my mom was like, okay, but you're going to be the Holy Ghost if anyone asks. So that's what I was for Halloween once when I was like 5.
She's right. They're very specific about what you can and can't wear for Halloween as your Halloween costume. You can't do anything scary.
No witches.
No, you could probably
no wolves.
A pirate
wolves.
is probably the most
That's as far as you can go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think I did do a pirate one year, but
So
yeah, as far
raping
as
and pillaging, that's totally fine.
of course. Well,
Well, that's in the Old Testament.
so that's what they would do. They would have this harvest festival. I forget what they really called it. It was something to do with the harvest. Bonnie may remember the actual name of it, but there was usually at schools usually had these as well because they wouldn't call them Halloween parties because that's too divisive. So they would have the harvest festival at school, and then you would have one at your church, and then usually there would also be some trick-or-treating somewhere along the way. And most of the families who participated in these harvest festivals, they also went trick-or-treating. You just didn't talk about it.
Okay.
But that was an interesting thing. But
because kids want to dress up, they want to have fun, they want to get candy.
Yeah.
And it is no fun to be the one kid. Because I remember growing up in Florida. It's not where I grew up in Florida wasn't the real South. They say that the real South in Florida is like the middle of the state. If you lived on the coast or near the coast, that's not the real South. Like the northern part of Florida near Alabama and Georgia, that's the real South, and the middle part of the Panhandle is the real South. So it probably wasn't near what you dealt with when you were growing up, or maybe even what you encountered, Bonnie, because I know you had a fairly religious upbringing. But I do remember one year where there was like one kid in class who his parents would not let him go to the school Halloween party. He had to sit it out.
Dude, that's rough.
And
That's really sad.
sucks.
I mean, our schools were smarter than that. They didn't call them Halloween parties. They called them harvest festivals or whatever, because it was that common that parents would object to these sorts of religious connotations, that they would just
It'd be a
call it
scandal.
something different.
If they called it a Halloween party, it'd be a scandal. People would be outraged.
But we did have, to my knowledge, I had one girl in one of my art classes who couldn't participate in some drawing competition we were doing because it had to do with Halloween. But that was the only instance I can think of where that actually happened. Usually it was just, we're going to call it something different, and that way God won't be angry, because God's too stupid to see through the ruse.
One thing my school did in Tennessee was we didn't have any type of Halloween party, but we had character day on Halloween where everybody could come in a costume that was a character of their book, and it was just all about reading.
Okay.
That's cool.
That's a good cover.
That's a creative
Now,
take.
is Tennessee in the Bible Belt?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Is the whole of Tennessee in the Bible Belt?
I'd say yeah.
Okay.
It's under Kentucky.
Okay, got it.
I'm from South Haven, Mississippi, which is basically Memphis, Tennessee. I mean, the two cities are basically on top of each other. They're merged into one horrible city. But there's Eastern Tennessee and there's Western Tennessee. Western Tennessee is like Memphis and that part. Eastern Tennessee is Nashville and the mountains, where you start getting into Appalachia, and it's more like Kentucky. I haven't been, that's where Will Coley of Muslims from Liberty is from. I never dealt with a lot of East Tennessee.
I was from Clarksville, Tennessee, which is northwest of Nashville, and it was a military town. If you were around all the Christian people, it was really Christian, and there were also probably plenty of my friends on my street, their parents weren't even Christian, so it was you could get the worst of it, or you could not hang around those people.
All right, so let's talk about the Judgment House.
Yeah, they're weird experiences, but you're right. It's a play that takes you through multiple rooms within a church, basically. Each one is set up as sort of a scene in this person's life, and it steps you through their life where they were born and they had a happy childhood. They were raised by loving Christian parents, and at some point they
took a wrong turn.
Yes, they turned away from God and got into drinking and drugs and womanizing and whatever else, and their brother, usually someone close to them in this play, dies in an accident. I think in the one that sticks out most firmly in my memory, the guy's brother died in some accident, and then they step you into heaven and they show you hell, and the whole point of the thing is to terrify you into becoming what they call saved. And they're fascinating from a psychological standpoint, because it's a normal play with church people. It's not good. I mean, they're not actors or actresses, but it's entertaining enough for most of it until you get to hell. And this is one of the things I will never forget, how insane these people were, because I went to support my father, who was in this thing at the time. I was an adult then, well known in the community as being an atheist.
Had you been to them prior?
I had been
as a kid.
I had been in one prior, but I didn't understand it, and that was a different one. With a completely different script. Same
church?
Yes.
Okay.
But that one targeted evolution at one point, and the one that my father was in didn't. There was one room where there was a gorilla pretending to be someone's grandmother or something like that, and they were like, "This is what they say we evolved from," It was that sort of thing. And I don't know if it was a Judgment House or what, because that's just the one thing that sticks out of my mind about that.
Yeah,
but
that's funny.
But the one my father was in, I went there to support him, and it was all innocuous until we got to hell, which was in a separate building from the main church. It was a shed-looking thing, and half of it was sectioned off with chain link fence, and they had red lighting everywhere. It was really eerie, smoke machines, and a CD player was playing sounds of people getting tortured and screaming and getting whipped. You were supposed to be 13 or older before going into this place, which I still think was probably too young. But, if someone wants to take their kids to it, but they didn't allow this girl who I wasn't dating her at the time, but I was interested in her at the time. They didn't allow her to take her kids in, and the room was just absolutely horrifying. You go in there and it's just bathed in red. There's smoke everywhere. There's people screaming. There's the sounds of torture, and it gets worse.
All right, we're going to continue here in moments. And you've never been to one of these things with your religious upbringing?
My parents would not have let me go in something like that.
All right, there's more.
Good for them.
There's more on the way. You can join us at 603-283-6160 if you want to comment on the Judgment House phenomenon.
Free Talk Live.
Most people think you have to seek out a God for finding meaning in life, but really meaning comes from your awareness that your next move will have a consequence to you, whether good or bad.
The meaning is created by the person having the experience.
It's inside
experiencer.
Your awareness that your next move will have a consequence for your positive or negative view of the world. That's where all meaning comes from.
And I fully believe that it's your interpretation of your experiences, how you decide to act as a result of the circumstances that surround you, that will ultimately decide your fate here. As far as, will you have a pleasant experience or will it be a hellacious one? I believe that
I believe in heaven and hell, but I believe that they exist every moment. Like you get to choose heaven and hell, and the people that do bad things experience hell because doing bad things results in bad stuff.
But you can always choose otherwise. You can begin at any moment to start over again.
Sinners can be redeemed.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. Talking about judgment houses, a.k.a. hell houses. I think it just depends on where you're growing up, what these things are called.
I saw one on King of the Hill.
Really?
Yeah, they make fun of the lady, so it's pretty funny. It's a great episode.
Hilarious.
Didn't they make fun of evolution in that particular one as well?
Yeah.
I tend to think, yeah. So maybe there are two different. I'm sure there's several different scripts.
Themes.
Yeah.
I think they're supposed to be Baptist in that church that King of the Hill people go to as well.
I have never been to one of these things, but I've always found them, interesting from a cultural, religious perspective to see what people are doing out there. And every now and then they'll get into the news for being just extreme or something happening at one of them. And it doesn't really seem like they're in the news that much this year. There is a story over at dailycost.com. There's usually at least one or two stories just sort of about a local hell house and what is going on there. And they usually pitch joining the church or being saved in the very last room when people finally make it through quote-unquote hell. And if you want to share your experience, the number here is 603-283-6160. You can, of course, bring up absolutely anything. But Aria, you were giving us your hell house experience. You were a young adult at this time. You'd gone to, was it a Baptist church? I don't know if you said
it was a Baptist church. Southern Baptist. Full fire and brimstone type of church. I mean, Southern Baptists have a stereotype like that, and it's warranted most of the time. It was in this particular case.
So you went to their judgment house. You went because your dad was involved. Now, did you? I don't think you told us what his role was in the house. Do you recall what he was doing?
He was the main character, so to speak, but the main character changed from one room to another because it was this person's
from boy
life.
To man or something. Mm-hmm.
So he was the main character at his brother's funeral or after recovering from drugs and going back and speaking at his brother's grave or something to that effect. He was the main character, remorseful, the cause of his brother's death or something like that. Mm-hmm. I don't remember exactly what the role was, but that's what he was. And I went there to support him because when I was in high school and junior high, I was in a lot of theatrical productions, and he always came out to support me. So I was like, fair enough. Fair is fair. And I agreed that I would keep my mouth shut because I was an outspoken atheist. And I was not going there to start a fight. I was going to their field, right?
You were going there to see the lady with the kids.
No, I didn't even know she was going to be there. That was just a happy coincidence, and I would never have dated her after what happened next. Oh. So the scene from hell is exactly what you would expect it to be. Envision your worst case scenario of hell, and that's what it was. Except it was not vulgar, and it wasn't. What's the word I'm looking for? It was PG-13. There was no nudity or anything like that. You could,
of course not.
Yes, gore. Thank you. But there was everything short of that. Mm-hmm. And the CD player, or I assume it was a CD player, the speakers really sold it. You go into there and it's this dimly lit room. Everything's bathed in red. There's chain link fences, and you see people grabbing a hold of them and shaking them and begging to be let out. And there's people laying over there chained to the ground. And then you have this man in a black suit, an attractive looking man, middle-aged, probably a little bit shorter than me, but just your clean-cut, black hair, black suit, walking around, threatening people, presenting himself as the devil.
He's the devil.
Yes, it's a charismatic one. But evil and threatening, sinister would be the word that I would use to describe this person. And it was what you would expect. He was going around creeping people out, saying, this is what awaits you. But then he noticed the little children there with this woman. And one of these kids could not have been more than 7 or 8 years old, and he was visibly scared. As you might expect someone to be in this particular scenario. He knows it's make-believe, sure, but when I was 7 or 8 years old watching horror movies, knowing that it was fake didn't make it any less scary, and some of them were legitimately scary. And this was real life for this kid, right? Yeah. And they're telling him, this is real. This is what is actually waiting for you when you die. And the man got in this little kid's face and said, I can make you turn on your mother. To this little 7 or 8 year old, he knelt down and got in his face and hissed that at him, I can make you turn on your mother, in just this horrifically evil way. And at that point, I could no longer be silent. I said, hey, he's just a little kid, back off. And he said, what do you think, this is a game? Do you think this is funny? He got up to yell at me. I was like, no, no part of this is funny. And he very quickly went back to the script and went back to, just getting people through. And then they ushered us out. And as we were leaving, one of the girls there who was stepping us through this thing, taking us from one room to the next, actually thanked me for intervening and telling the guy to back off. At least one of these people was actually sane, watching this grown man
threaten a little kid.
Attempt to terrorize this little child. What do you mean? How could I possibly have been the only one who said anything?
I was going to say the atheist, the only one with any moral conviction in the church.
Well, at least one other lady was upset by it. And it was one person got saved because of this Judgment House, and no points for guessing who that one person was.
It was
that little kid.
Oh, the kid?
Yes. The one who got terrorized, the one who was visibly terrified already. Yes, it worked. They terrified the child into giving his life to Jesus. And what kind of God would this have to be if that's the way he wins souls, by terrorizing people to that extent? The whole concept of heaven and hell is strange to me for this reason. I heard this joke a long time ago. Is someone died and they get taken to hell, and they played golf with their friends, they go hang out, they drink afterwards. The devil seems like a real nice guy, and they're hanging out with their friends, they have a great time, and then they go to heaven and they go from cloud to cloud singing and praising God. And then he's offered a choice. Do you want to spend the rest of your eternity in hell or in heaven? And the guy says, well, I hate to say it, but I want to go to hell. That's where my friends are. I got to drink and play golf and hang out all day. So he gets there, and it turns out the hell is this den of torture and horrible things. It's like, wait, what happened? This isn't how it was yesterday. And of course the devil says, well, yesterday we were campaigning, and then you voted, and now this is the result of the election. It's cute, right? But it made me, what I took away from that was, look at how these people described hell. That this guy's paradise, the one thing that he would want more than anything else, right? He's with his friends, he's drinking, he's playing golf, he's having a good time. And how do they describe heaven? What Christians describe as paradise. This is how you're going to spend the rest of eternity, and you're going to love it. You're going to be filled with
harp
bliss.
And everything.
Yeah. And it's two sentences of, we were going from cloud to cloud singing and playing the harp. And it sounds absolutely horrible, right? But that's how they described heaven. And this is why for years I've been telling Christians, I will repent on the spot. I will convert to Christianity on the spot. All you have to do is sell me the idea of heaven. If you can convince me that this is a place I want to go, I'll repent. I'll convert to Christianity. But I don't think they can do it, because the best pitch they have is usually something like, oh, well, for whatever reason,
you get to see your grandmother, and
maybe.
Well, all the stuff that I heard about heaven when I was a kid is not in the Bible. It's like, my mom would read these books by people that would say they went to heaven and this is what they saw, and none of that's in the Bible. So it's just like some lady saying these things. Like, I was like, oh, I want to go to heaven because you can have whatever flying little animal you want. You can breathe underwater when I was a kid, and that's not in the Bible.
I like the idea, and Bonnie, you might agree with me on this, that God is within, and that your life can be heaven or hell depending on what choices you make, and your beliefs and your mentality and what you espouse and how you feel. And it really is all up to you whether you have a hellacious experience or a heavenly one right here and right now.
Yeah, and there's no proving or disproving what there is after death, whether there's a book that says something or not.
Do you remember the type of Muslim that Will Coley was?
Sufi.
Sufi, yes. I love
the mystic.
I don't believe in heaven or hell, but as far as takes on hell goes, the Sufi one was probably the most sensible, where it's self-imposed, and it's basically you burning away your own guilt, and it lasts until you are guilt-free. Yeah. It's not eternal, it's not forever, but it lasts until you are able to forgive yourself for your transgressions against yourself and others. I don't believe in that, but as far as concepts of hell goes, that's probably one of the most, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, one of the best, I guess.
The number here is 603-283-6160. I miss me some Will Coley. I wish he were around to hang out with us. 603-283-6160. You can join us here on the Halloween episode. Phones are open as always.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The mayor of Kyiv says 40% of the city's householders are without running water after a series of Russian attacks in the early hours of Monday. More than 250,000 homes also have no electricity after the Kremlin's forces targeted infrastructure in the Ukrainian capital. FSN's Sergio Olmos is there.
Russia has now hit Ukraine on 3 Mondays out of 4 this month, hitting infrastructure, trying to constrict the lifeblood of cities. It is quite cold in Ukraine, and it is getting colder. It's already the heating season. These attacks on infrastructure meant to make it miserable, to try to force Ukraine to a negotiating position.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says he will continue to try and revive an international agreement with the Kremlin on grain shipments from Ukraine, aimed at heading off a food crisis in the developing world this winter. Moscow pulled out of the deal over the weekend, accusing Ukraine of drone strikes on Russian naval vessels. Britain's Home Secretary Suella Braverman has admitted sending government documents to her personal email address at least 6 times over the last 2 months. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is under fire over his decision to reappoint her to a role from which she resigned just days before he came to power. On Monday, the Home Secretary was also forced to defend her plans on immigration to lawmakers, as FSN's Sally Patterson reports from our London bureau.
Writing to the Home Affairs Select Committee, Home Secretary Suella Braverman apologised for breaching security rules and claimed the migration policy proposals she'd sent to her personal phone did not contain any information relating to national security and were not marked top secret. The opposition Labour Party claims the letter leaves more unanswered questions over her, quote, irresponsible conduct, and have called on her to resign.
The man who allegedly attacked Paul Pelosi, husband of the Speaker of the House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi, has been charged with assault and attempted kidnapping. David DePape is accused of breaking into the Pelosi family residence in San Francisco early on Friday, brandishing a hammer and shouting, "Where is Nancy?" Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro is yet to concede after losing Sunday's presidential election. Meanwhile, a number of world leaders have congratulated Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva on his election win. From Rio, where he's on special assignment, FSN's Will Denzelo.
Right-wing Bolsonaro hasn't commented since his defeat was announced, but close ally Damares Alves tweeted that the election was lost, but the love for the nation remains. Leftist Lula, who served as president from 2003 to 2010, will take over the presidency in the new year and has vowed to work to unite Brazil after a deeply polarising election.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at the state of the world's climate ahead of the COP27 climate change summit that convenes in Egypt next Sunday. The UN is warning of a global catastrophe because so little progress has again been made by governments in the fight against global warming.
We've lost time. We can still act, and we have to act quickly.
Sir David King heads the Climate Crisis Advocacy Group and is a former UK government special representative on climate change.
What is happening on the ground is much worse than the climate scientific community were predicting. The Arctic Circle region has now heated up to 3 degrees centigrade above the pre-industrial level, much more double than the 1.5 average for the rest of the planet. Greenland sits in the Arctic Circle, and as Greenland ice melts, global sea levels will rise by 7 meters. If we look at what is happening in the permafrost regions around the North Pole, there's enough methane trapped up there that if it was all released in 20 years, temperatures would rise 5 to 8 degrees centigrade. These several disasters is what will happen, and it will trigger other tipping points to go.
And he is very critical of UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's decision not to travel to Egypt for COP27. President Biden will be there. The main news again. The mayor of Kiev says 40% of the city's households are without running water after a series of Russian attacks in the early hours of Monday. British Home Secretary Suella Braverman has admitted sending government documents to her personal email address on at least 6 occasions over 2 months. And Eurozone inflation reached a record 10.7% in October, up from a previous record of 9.9% in September. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
A new report from the National Center for Education shows that an alarming 10% of U.S. high school students graduate without basic object permanence skills. According to the study, a growing number of American seniors are lagging behind their international counterparts when it comes to the crucial knowledge that things don't just disappear if you're not looking at them.
Because it exists even if your eyes can't see it. Am I making sense?
No. U.S. high schoolers have dropped to 17th in science, 25th in math, and a troubling 180th place in the basic cognitive awareness most humans develop as toddlers. Secretary of Education Arne Duncan is asking Congress to fund increased after-school disguise and reveal programs.
It's time to get the kids excited to learn the most obvious mental concepts that make us capable of functioning.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to do better. It's just I don't know how I'm supposed to learn anything if I don't even have a teacher.
I'm still here, Vanessa.
Some educators worry that too much focus placed on object permanence might take away from other important skills, such as not touching hot things that could burn you.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Aria.
It's not just all Halloween-related stuff here tonight. We've got real scary stories like inflation, stuff that can actually harm you and your loved ones right here and right now. By the way, most Americans think the U.S. is out of control. According to a recent CBS News YouGov survey, found 79% of respondents, nearly 8 out of 10 Americans, believe that the current state of affairs is quote-unquote out of control.
Seems low.
I wonder
Seems low.
I wonder what they mean by that.
Apparently, I mean, obviously, I don't have the full poll in front of me.
When you think of the different ways it could be interpreted, the number really seems low because it's like, it is out of control. If you can't think of it as out of control in one way, like, I don't know, that's too much of a right-wing way to think of it. Well, there's definitely some left-wing way to think of it too, or monetary or culturally or...
It is certainly out of your control and my control, and it always has been. The illusion that you can vote your way out of this situation is something people need to finally learn their lesson on, but I don't think they're going to.
No, that's exactly why they think it's out of control, because they're not exercising power over their fellow man in the way that think they should be able to.
If only my politicians were in charge, then we'd get this situation under control. And I think that...
If you even just look at the debt, you should be able to understand that it's out of control. There's no way to control it.
The big midterm issue, of course, for most people is going to be inflation. And that's understandable. That's the thing that is affecting absolutely everybody. Only the richest of the rich are the ones that can just kind of turn their nose up at it. But
it's hurting me.
Everybody gets hurt by inflation. And the Republicans are, of course, making it their big campaign push, right? Like, oh, well, if you put us in charge, we'll get this thing under control. And
it wasn't under control under George W. Bush or Donald J. Trump.
No, and they don't think about the fact that Trump signed a huge bailout package during COVID that was what kickstarted the increase in inflation. It's just the 8% or 9% numbers, which, again, are inaccurate. They're low. But those numbers didn't start coming until later. That's because when they print the trillions of dollars, it doesn't all flush right into, the prices immediately. It takes
If they don't understand that, then they don't understand what those numbers mean at all, because it means it's inflating that much more than that month the year before.
Correct.
So it doesn't mean inflation started this month for the first time ever when we come out with a number.
Well, Of course they don't know what the numbers mean. And I mean, they don't care. It doesn't matter what the numbers mean ultimately. All they have to do is convince the voters out there that this is a Democrats' problem, that they can make up whatever numbers they want and they can make up whatever facts they want. All they have to do is convince people that this is Biden and the Democrats' fault. Vote for us and we'll fix it.
Even though every president, Democrat or Republican, has increased defense spending every time there's a new president.
Sure. And they're not going to turn things around. And that's the thing. But the problem is Americans will not understand this. Even if the Republicans come in a huge wave, as they're, some are hoping that they will, obviously. Even if they do, right? Because on the Democrat side, it's going to be pushing for abortion rights. That's what they're trying to get the Democrats out to vote for abortion rights.
Yeah,
and
that's what every anti Don Bolduc or whatever commercial I see is about.
It's all about abortion.
It's all about abortion. Yeah.
I wanted to exploit that by having campaign signs that said Aria DiMezzo pro-choice on everything. But by the time they would have gotten here, if this would be like, 2 days before the election.
No point.
No, but it would have been good, right? Because I have an article coming out tomorrow in the Keene Sentinel where
I was going to ask if they interviewed you yet.
They did, where I essentially said exactly that.
Okay, good.
The libertarian position is being pro-choice on everything. Because they asked me about critical race theory or controversial, whatever it is, some bill that got put forward about teaching controversial things in class. I said, well, look, if somebody doesn't like it, they can take their kids to a different school. They should have multiple schools to choose from, and they should be able to find the one they like that is teaching their kids the things that they want their kids taught.
Good. I'm glad they're giving you a chance to have a story in the paper. So.
Pro-choice on everything.
I'm looking forward to reading that when that comes out. But
should be tomorrow.
The point I wanted to make about the Republicans is they're making inflation their issue. They're blaming the Democrats for it. They're saying our policies will solve this. But we all know that's not, at least those of us who are paying attention, know that that's not going to be the case. Mind you, I'm not telling you the Democrats are going to solve this either. They all created this together. Inflation isn't some magical force like this woman at the European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde. She said recently in an interview with an Irish state broadcaster, she said, we do it. She's talking about raising the rates because they're doing that there too, right? So like the Federal Reserve has been raising its interest rates, and so is the European Central Bank. And of course, that affects the prices of home mortgages and other loans and things like that. And they always claim it's fighting inflation. So that's what she says here. We do it because we're fighting inflation, she says, that had, quote, pretty much come about from nowhere.
Well, she said pretty much to cover all her bases.
Yeah. What? How do... Okay. Inflation is the increase in the money supply, obviously.
That's what it is,
That's what it is. But that's not what they call inflation. They call an increase in prices. That's what they call inflation. Yes. However, like, it's not hard to trace back the rise in prices. You said she's with some European...
This is the head of the European Central Bank. This is the equivalent of the chairman of the Federal Reserve for Europe.
They know there's a war in Ukraine, right?
Oh, and she blames that too, of course. Well, she blames Putin.
Which is
the
fine.
Next sentence.
I mean, it's incorrect.
I mean, Putin instead of the tax or tariffs.
Tariffs?
Or wait, what? Not tariffs. I'm trying to think of the word when they're restricting sanctions.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But at least blaming the war is like a cause. No one out there, I hope, I say no one, I hope that no one out there is stupid enough to believe that prices just randomly started increasing and no one has an explanation.
In a way, people do think that because they believe that, oh, it's just greedy corporations raising their prices for no reason.
That was their excuse a year ago.
If that was the truth, then the greedy corporations would be undercutting people.
That's true because it makes sense. If Amazon raises all their prices by $1, then Walmart would only raise their prices by 98 cents or whatever
not
to
raise
undercut
their
them.
Prices to be the only ones getting all the, business.
But see, they're all raising their prices, so clearly it's collusion on the part of the corporations that are doing this to us. Well, they've abandoned
in which case, government didn't protect us from the corporations, so what good is government?
No, the government actually created the corporations, but no one wants to talk about that.
But see, that's the myth they perpetuate, is that we need government to keep corporations in check, to keep corporations from raping us and raising prices and colluding together. But government is in bed with the corporations and always has been.
Mm-hmm.
You can't create these power apparati, and not expect them to not be in bed together. So it's like the separation of church and state all over again. Of course they're going to cooperate and work together to oppress people and to collude together. It's not corporations colluding together that you have to worry about. It's government colluding with corporations.
So the next thing that's going to happen, if the Republicans take the majority of the federal government seats in the midterms, is inflation is going to continue because that's what governments do. They print, central banks print money. It's going to continue. The interest rates are going to continue rising. Mortgage rates are going to continue to likely go up until they stop raising the rates or whatever. But they're going to keep printing the money. You can assure yourself of that. And so therefore the Republicans are then going to blame it on Biden. Oh, well, you did put us in charge and we are, running things, but we don't have the presidency. And so therefore, even though we have the majority in the House and the Senate, we can't stop this crazy inflation. You have to elect a Republican
to fight
in 2024 to the presidency.
Because it's a dragon.
So they'll get to kick the can down the road for 2 more years. Meanwhile, inflation continues and things get worse. People's lives get worse. And they can just keep on making these excuses and people just keep gobbling it up. More coming up. Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important
and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Should you be able to earn an honest living free from senseless government interference? The Institute for Justice thinks so. That's why we've spent years defending hard-working men and women from pointless government regulations. Nationwide, IJ has created opportunity by reducing government power. But there is still more work to be done. Visit our website today at ij.org. Let IJ take care of the government so you can take care of your business.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Phones are open, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. 603-283-6160. Here in the studio tonight, we've got Ian.
And Bonnie.
And Aria.
You can join us online. Just head over to freetalklive.com and enjoy the features that we have there for you. Once again, that's freetalklive.com. Our social media platform is one of those features. You can go to social.freetalklive.com, interact with other Free Talk Live listeners there, and do it all for free, and you don't have to worry about censorship unless you're going to come there and try to spam us. We don't want you doing that. But otherwise, you have freedom to express yourself there that you probably won't get on the Elon Musk version of Twitter, which is we've yet to see exactly what that's going to be like. I've got some stories about that. If we get the chance, we can talk about the latest with the takeover that has been going on throughout the weekend there. And also Facebook and all their oppressive policies. You can experience ours over at social.freetalklive.com. We were talking about the European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde telling an interview with the Irish state broadcaster that inflation, quote, pretty much came about from nowhere, she said. Further pointing to Putin as the cause, quote, the energy crisis caused by Mr. Putin. No. It was caused by your European Union deciding to take a side in the conflict. That is what has caused your energy crisis. People are going to be cold this winter, likely, and that's because of the sanctions that these people put on the Russian government and people.
Yes, I can't imagine any scenario where Putin or the Russian energy companies would have just been like, you know what? We don't like doing business with this entire continent of paying customers. We don't want to do business with them anymore. However, Europe and the United States and other Western countries decided that they were going to take Ukraine's side in this conflict by imposing a lot of sanctions on Russia.
Right.
And they thought, for some bizarre reason, that Russia couldn't in kind impose sanctions against Europe. I don't know why they thought that, but they thought they could just act with impunity and impose all of these sanctions and it wouldn't come back to bite them.
Well, I think a lot of the times Europe acts just like America and thinking they're untouchable. Like, oh, we're Western states or whatever. Yeah.
The one good thing I can say about the United States in this scenario is, as far as I can tell, they haven't imposed a lot of sanctions on Russia. The United States, other than sending a lot of weapons to Ukraine, and if escalating the war by doing that, the United States has largely stayed out of it.
There have been sanctions, although they've been against the oligarchs or whatever. They've been against Putin and his buddies, essentially, as I understand it.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Which is still too much. They should never have done it.
And then what really hurt was the American corporations joining voluntarily. So it wasn't that McDonald's had to pull out of Russia. It wasn't that Netflix had to stop serving people in Russia, or YouTube, or you fill in the... There's so many different companies that have jumped on this bandwagon. It was this huge signaling, this corporate signaling that says, oh, we think it's good. We'll please our masters in D.C., even though they didn't tell us we had to.
You're right. I have to retract my statement.
Yes. I mean, it's not sanctions. It's not like full-on starve them out sanctions in the traditional sense of you aren't prohibited by law from doing business with Russia, as I understand it. I don't think they've gone that far. But you are, for instance, prohibited by law from doing business with Iran or Cuba in many cases. That's been loosened a little bit from what I understand. But Iran, North Korea, for sure, you're not allowed to do business with people in those countries, even though doing business with those people would actually help them like America more and understand, markets and be intertwined economically with the people of this country, which can only be a good thing. No, they don't care about that. They want to punish those people. So they didn't go that far with Russia, and so the corporations went further. The corporations decided to break up with the Russian people, and remember, OnlyFans was another example. OnlyFans stopped allowing Russian people, Russian accounts to. Well, I mean, there's other people there, I think, but to monetize their business.
What did you call them?
Sluts.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with it. Like, I don't think it should be illegal. It doesn't mean I can't call people sluts.
You can have your opinion.
It's a good job. I mean, it's a fine job to exist.
It's probably a lot cleaner than actually having to touch a guy in a strip club or something like that.
That's true. And Backpage, I think, was another popular site that did something. Backpage was used for contacting sex workers, prostitutes, most people would call them, whereas OnlyFans is modeling, is more like pornography.
Yeah.
But, they drastically improved the safety of sex workers. And
the existence of
the existence of Backpage and OnlyFans.
And the feds went after Backpage.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to bring Chuck on the line here. He's in Washington State. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the lunchbox of a sex worker, by the way?
No.
I just thought I'd throw that out there.
What does that mean?
Is that a dirty joke?
Oh, wait, no, I think he's trying to say, it's not real work because they don't go...
I'm not saying that. I just want to know what's in the lunchbox of a sex worker.
It's probably something we can't talk about on the air. So what were you calling about?
Take a lunchbox with me to work. I mean, do most people do that?
Well, you work at a restaurant.
I know, but even when I did it, it's like...
some people pack lunch.
Go eat.
Most people probably just go and grab fast food or something.
Like an igloo cooler with a blue ice thing going on there.
Some people pack their lunch when they go to work, Ari. I mean, that's not unheard of. Ari, you eat out a lot, right? So that's how you do things. But people who don't want to spend that much money on eating out all the time, they'll make a sandwich and make their own lunch.
I think adults don't really have lunch boxes. It'll be something else. But anyways, I don't think that was
a brown bag, whatever. Anyway, Chuck, what were you calling about tonight?
Sorry, I couldn't resist that. So, this whole thing with vote for me, I'm a Republican, I have the answers to solve this inflation thing.
Mm-hmm.
It really is kind of insulting, don't you think, that, and you've kind of picked up on this and talked about this earlier in your dialogue earlier in this hour, with some of the policies that the Republicans have pushed that helped get us here. And I just don't, I can't quite understand how the Republican Party thinks that the American voters are that gullible.
Oh, they are.
I don't really think
they absolutely are. I mean, just look at this. It goes on every 4 years. Every 4 years. One side tricks the other side. Sorry, go ahead.
You're talking about surge voters for the presidential race, and we're talking about a midterm election where those voters tend to be a little bit more they tend to be a little bit more smarter, I think.
I've heard this myth before, and I've heard the myth that primary voters tend to be even more knowledgeable and more informed than your midterm voters.
A little bit more partisan.
I have never seen any evidence to suggest that people who vote in primaries or midterm elections are any more intelligent than people who vote in presidential elections.
Didn't you debunk that, Arya?
I would say that my running for sheriff did at least partially debunk that.
The fact that no one pays attention, or a very small number of them.
And I've yet to see any evidence suggesting that it's valid.
I was going to invite Chuck to hang on, but he just dropped off the line. I would have been happy to continue the conversation. If you want to call back in, Chuck, you're welcome to. The number here is 603-283-6160, because I do want to continue this discussion about voters and why they just won't wake up.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. President Joe Biden has spoken with Brazilian President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the White House has confirmed. During the call, he congratulated his counterpart's victory over Jair Bolsonaro, the first sitting president of Brazil to lose a re-election bid. FSN's Benji Heyer reports.
President Biden was quick to offer his congratulations following Lula's narrow win announced on Sunday, commending the strength, he says, of Brazilian democratic institutions following what he called free, fair and credible elections, to signal perhaps to incumbent Jair Bolsonaro's allies that they should not dismiss the result. Mr. Biden and the soon-to-be leader of the world's fifth biggest country, in their phone call on Monday, discussed the strong relationship between the US and Brazil and committed to continue working as partners to address common challenges, including combating climate change, safeguarding food security, and promoting democracy. Unlike in many other South American nations, the United States is on the whole viewed positively in Brazil. Benji Heyer, Washington, D.C.
Federal prosecutors have charged the man accused of attacking the husband of U.S. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi with a hammer at the couple's San Francisco home. The criminal complaint includes new allegations about the assault, including that the suspect threatened to break Nancy Pelosi's kneecaps if she lied under questioning. The Democratic congresswoman was in Washington, D.C. when 42-year-old David DePape is accused of breaking into her home in the middle of the night and confronting her husband, Paul Pelosi, who was sleeping. Police found zip ties as well as tape and gloves that DePape had brought with him. The Justice Department has charged DePape with assaulting the family member and attempted kidnapping of a federal official. That's in addition to separate charges filed by the state of California. The incident has raised concern about the safety of U.S. elected officials ahead of next week's midterm elections. And U.S. stocks slipped on Monday ahead of a busy week. Investors are gearing up for the central bank to unveil its latest round of interest rate hikes as it tries to control inflation. FSN's Gabrielle Fahmy reports from New York.
Despite stocks losing steam on Monday, markets closed the month higher after a bloody September. The Nasdaq rose 4% for the month, the S&P 500 8%, and the biggest winner was the Dow Jones, shooting up as much as 14%, making October one of its best months on record. Traders are expecting another 75 basis point interest rate hike when the Federal Reserve meets this week. But many think the central bank will signal the end of its aggressive hikes after that. In oil markets, Texas crude fell to $86 a barrel after President Joe Biden signaled he wanted to tax big oil.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Aria.
We were talking about a little bit about inflation, and then we got into the prediction, and I don't think this is going out on a limb at all, that you've got the Republicans saying, oh, just elect us. We'll solve inflation. Inflation's a Democrat problem. They did this. And look, I'm not saying the Democrats are going to make inflation go away. Both the Republicans and Democrats are together on this. They're never going to tell you that. But it's like the old wrestling situation, right, where they pretend to be enemies, but the reality is they're both on the same team. They're getting paid by the same boss, that kind of thing.
It should be obvious. Look how many pictures there are and videos there are of Donald Trump hanging out with the Clintons.
Yes.
Back in the 90s. These people are very good friends, and they get along. They do a good job of pretending to hate each other publicly, but as soon as the camera's off, they're working together to screw you over.
And the Obamas with the Bushes.
The Bushes. Well, there are pictures. You say when the cameras are off. The reality is
they're smiling for the camera.
Yeah, these people are posing together and acting like they're friends because they basically are.
George W. really likes Michelle Obama, and it's so cute. I mean, I know they're both evil monsters.
Maybe he's gay.
George W.?
Yeah, there's a theory that Michelle's a man.
Oh.
You never heard that theory?
I've heard it, but when you suggest that George W. Bush is gay, the first thing that comes to mind isn't, obviously, because Michelle is a trans person, right? I don't know.
Michael Obama is what they say.
Well, Obama accidentally called her Michael during a speech. That's where that comes from.
I didn't know that.
He was like, Michael and I did blah, 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 and just continues talking.
It could be the broad shoulders, too. I mean, I've heard people make the allegation, if Michelle is trans, good for her. She's doing a great job. Keep it up.
There would just be a lot more weird stuff going on if she was, because, where did the kids come from? There's already theories that the kids were adopted by these people that they're friends with, that the kids look way more like. There's just weird theories. For one thing, she gets up, she's on, I think, Ellen DeGeneres, and she gets up and something moves around in her dress in a really weird way. That's where it started. I don't think it's just she looks like a man. I don't think that they're saying that.
Is what you're saying.
It was that, that clip. And you can find it online. And then, what's her name? The lady that died? The comedian lady, Joan Rivers. Oh. She said she was walking through the street and some paparazzi's following her and was like, did you read Michelle Obama's book or something? And for some reason, Joan Rivers just goes, Michelle Obama is a man. And he's like, what? Did you just say Michelle Obama's a man? She's like, yes, and everyone in Hollywood knows it. She keeps walking. She died that week.
Whoa. I love how deep this stuff gets. It's just so crazy.
I don't see any point in hiding it, though. I mean,
it is weird.
If Michelle Obama is trans, that's a huge, plus sign for the...
But it might not have gotten him elected.
Yeah, but it's over now.
Well, that's true. Yeah, you're right about that.
So now, yes, I was born a man.
Exactly. If they just came out and I mean, not that it's anyone's business and like she has to. I'm not saying that either. But if they came out and they're like, listen, we just want to talk about the allegations. Michelle is a trans woman. I don't think anybody should be upset about that. It's just the weirdness of not only hiding it, but then pretending that the kids are their kids. I'm not saying that that is the truth. It's just the conspiracy theory, and I've explained it to you.
I mean, how common is it that they wouldn't address it? Like, even Lady Gaga addressed it with some interview. I don't remember who the interviewer was, but he was like, hey, you know, there's rumors that...
Bradley Cooper?
Is that who it was?
Or not Bradley Cooper, dang it, it's another Cooper. Alan Cooper, I don't know his name.
Anderson Cooper. He was like, there are rumors that you have male organs. And she was like, well, what if I do? Would it be so terrible?
Yeah.
I was like, man, that's a really good point.
Answer.
She said my fans wouldn't care, and it's true. Nobody would really care.
Yes, I mean, the only people who would care about Michelle Obama would be Republicans.
For the most part.
Yeah, and if you're like, oh, suddenly they would have, they lied to us for all of these years. Yes, that's why you're suddenly upset.
There's probably some blue dog Democrats, Southern Democrats that would probably drop off from supporting, but
that's true.
But it would be mostly the conservatives who would
in general,
be all aroused about that.
Who cares?
So here's a fun one, since we were talking about the EU and their economic difficulties that they want to blame on Putin. Did you hear about the Russian heating points in Europe?
I did, yes. Courtesy of Russia, you can go and warm up at...
Use electricity?
No, heating oil or natural gas.
Yeah, but presumably they're using natural gas, but we don't know.
How does this work? Is this like a little police box type of thing?
It's like probably just like a little shop or something.
I wish Russia
like
would do that in New Hampshire.
Why? I mean, New Hampshire's plenty warm.
Yeah, we're okay.
No, in the winter it's not plenty warm.
Well, they're trying to make a point.
No, they can do it in places where we're outside doing activism. Outside of the court whenever we're passing out jury nullification things.
Yeah, I don't
Russia's not heating up the outside in the European
work.
Union.
Oh, but if they were doing like phone boxes.
I see what you're saying. But no, they're not going to do that here because they don't have the point to make here like they do in Europe. And basically what they're doing is they're trolling. This is really epic level trolling where, okay, EU, you're telling us you're going to sanction us. Fine. You've sanctioned us. Now we're going to turn off your gas lines. Okay. Oh, somebody bombed one of our gas lines. Oh, okay. Well, now we can't turn on the gas lines even if you wanted to.
I hadn't heard about that.
Oh, you didn't hear about Nord Stream 2 being exploded like a month ago?
No.
That's huge. That's huge news. It was a big development in this whole European energy crisis situation, and there's an interesting theory that it's the United States government.
Well, only because Joe Biden was on camera during a speech saying, we have the means and we just might blow up Nord Stream 2. I would do it.
He didn't say blow up. He said they would take it out or something like that.
And we have ways of doing that and stuff like that.
This was in February before the invasion. He said if Putin invades Ukraine, we will take out Nord Stream 2.
What's the benefit of doing that?
Great question. So the best theory that I've heard is that obviously it's an attack on an ally, right? Like that's going to hurt the people of the European Union by taking out a huge gas pipeline that was full of natural gas and ready to go, and that the only reason it wasn't in operation was because the German government was refusing to turn it on. But it had been built. Russia had spent $20 billion building this thing. So it doesn't make sense for Russia to attack their own pipeline. It doesn't make sense for Europe to attack their own pipeline. Why would the U.S. do it? The theory is that it would benefit U.S. natural gas sellers because the natural gas sellers in the U.S. would then get to raise their prices because then they get to sell natural gas to the people of Europe.
That would be playing a dangerous game. I don't think the U.S. is that level of greedy at this point.
There was an interesting video that Jay in our chat room shared. He calls himself President DeSantis right now. It's his current username.
And he calls himself
in there.
Gay Treville
on Twitter. Yeah, so he shared a video of this guy that does like space.
I'm glad to hear the coward has returned.
He's back. I love Jay.
Yeah,
but anyway, the video was of this like geek on YouTube who has some fancy flight tracking software. You know, they have these things for like a cell phone. You can download an app and see where the flights are over you. Well, this is like a really fancy one that's like desktop level quality graphics, 3D graphics. He had floated over to this area of the world. Baltic Sea is what it's called, right? Up there north of west of Russia and north of Europe. He had floated over this area, and he had selected the time frame when this attack happened on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and saw that there was a U.S. flight of like this submarine detecting kind of plane.
It has the ability to take out submarines because it can detect and then attack submarines. So it can detect and then attack things that are underwater.
This plane is the only one in the vicinity at the time. It has like no numbers associated with it. It was like a hidden serial number basically for this plane.
Then
it comes in, refuels across Europe, and then flies over, lowers from 20,000 feet to 10,000 feet, and then goes away. Right when the attack happened. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Energy got expensive. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. There are things you can do right there at home to cut energy cost. Are you running a load of wash? Unless you're attacking serious stains, the cold water mode is okay for most of what you're washing. And wait until you have a full load to save electricity and water. Ditto for the dishwasher, which will also save on detergent, which is pricey now. And stocking up on groceries doesn't just take advantage of bargains you find. Your freezer works more efficiently when it's full, because all the stuff in there is frozen, so you'll use less electricity. As for the fridge, set it between 28 and 42 degrees Fahrenheit, and the freezer between 0 and 5. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. Take control of the airwaves and bring up whatever you want. It's Ian, Bonnie, and Aria in the studio tonight, and you can join us online, of course, at freetalklive.com. Enjoy the various features that we have waiting for you there. If you had the misfortune of being at Camp Lejeune between the years of 1953 to 1988, and further, you suffered from cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, you might be entitled to compensation because there were contaminants in the drinking water at that time that may have led to those diseases. There might be some filing deadlines on this, so don't wait. You should call the next number I'm going to give you here in a moment, and you can find out if you or a loved one are eligible. The number is 888-918-1037. That's 888-918-1037. If you were at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988, somewhere in there, and have had a serious health issue, money is already set aside. The number is 888-918-1037. We were just talking about some epic trolling. Now, we had already seen, and I don't know if either of you saw this video feed on Twitch, where somebody in Russia was streaming 24 hours a day of a gas stove in operation with a current price in Russia of like per, I don't know, liter or gallon or whatever it is, however they sell cubic feet of natural gas, but it was like, you know, $1.50 or whatever. It was super cheap.
I had heard about it, but I never actually saw it.
They got banned off of Twitch right away. And
what? There's nothing illegal or shady about someone burning oil?
Yeah, you wouldn't think that would have violated their terms of service, but Twitch just, you know, they did what they did.
Do what they want.
And that's some really good trolling, by the way. It's passive aggressive. It's a middle finger, but it's not evil. It's not corrupt. It's not sick. It's not twisted. It's just someone trolling. Because look, I feel bad for the innocent bystanders in Europe and the innocent bystanders in Russia and the innocent bystanders in Ukraine. I feel bad for the innocent bystanders throughout the world in general. This is why I oppose the state. It's always the innocent bystanders who are getting punished and who are getting caught in the crossfire as states engage in these wars and sanctions against one another. However, Europe brought this on themselves with the sanctions against Russia.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are people in Europe who do not agree with the sanctions, right? In the same way that there are people in Russia who do not agree with the war. But unfortunately, they're all subject to whatever stupid crap their governments want to force them into. And so that's not to say that it's not like I'm with you. I get it. This isn't funny per se, what these people are going through, but I can still appreciate the humor in what this person did to point out the ridiculousness of this situation by making this Twitch feed.
Yes, this is a lot less big of a deal than the war itself, or than, you know, actually taking a gun out and shooting a Russian or Ukrainian or a European or however the states would resolve these conflicts. This is just someone in their home burning oil on their stove. And that's funny.
And so the next level of that is the story from RT.com about the Russian heating points. Their cultural centers that have opened in Finland and Luxembourg are now welcoming visitors who need to, quote-unquote, warm up as energy prices continue to skyrocket, according to the country's Federal Agency for Compatriots Living Abroad and International Humanitarian Cooperation.
I'm just shocked that they're allowing like a Russian business to even come in and do something like that.
Well, they're not prohibiting, as I understand it, Russians from traveling. They're not prohibiting the Russians that are in these countries. Like, there's not a roundup of Russians and they're locking them in camps yet, right? Like, that hasn't happened. And so they're not prohibited from starting a business or opening a business. And so the Russian government has people in a lot of places, and they had some of their people open up a business that's like funded by the Russian government, obviously, and they can just afford to pay whatever the cost. I don't think it's just natural. I don't think there's any news here that this is one type of fuel or another. It's probably whatever's offered by whatever that country is in that particular city. It's just that they don't have to worry about the payments because the Russian government's going to foot the bill. You know, that's where the money's coming from, to pay the bill for the heating. So it's like, it's as warm as they want it to be in the heating point. Everybody else in the city is keeping it cold. They're dropping their heat by 10 or 15% or whatever.
To me, I think the more amusing one, and this is just, because it didn't affect me personally, but it appeals to me personally, was Russia saying, some politician in Russia saying, look, if you states want to secede from the U.S. government,
yes, that's right,
we'll consider welcoming you into Russia. Russia's getting pretty good at trolling, and I like that aspect of this. I just wish they wouldn't resort to violence and war. Just, can we troll one another? Because that's good.
Maybe the whole Satanism thing is also a troll, and we just haven't figured it out yet.
What do you mean by that?
The Russians appointed Putin as their top exorcist to exorcise the Satanism out of Ukraine.
It probably isn't trolling, though, because there's seriously very religious, as far as Orthodox Christians, I believe, in Russia. Yeah, so
they've come up with this. It's just a new way of justifying their war, whereas previously it was, we're going after the Nazis and we're going to protect the Crimeans or Krimites or whatever they would be called. Now it's also, they're also Satanists over there, so we're fighting the Nazis and the Satanists.
Whatever, they just, they're just justifying violence, and it's not.
That's
something
all it is. Yeah.
It's not something that I support. But on the other hand, I also think that the people of the Donbass should have been allowed to secede in 2014.
Absolutely,
when they voted to do that. So, like, I kind of understand the justification, at least for the initial invasion, and the idea of, well, look, the people in Donbass tried to secede from you guys. You said no, and then you bombed the hell out of them for the last 7 years. So we're just going to go in to protect these people on, an international peacekeeping mission.
I understand aspects of it, and if that was it, if that was the full scope of the war...
They seemed to go beyond that, though, didn't they?
Yeah. It would be more understandable. I still wouldn't support it because I just can't fathom too many scenarios where I would actually support a war.
The body that essentially has rented these cultural centers in Finland and Luxembourg to allow people to warm up has opened it's called Rossorudnekstevo. It has opened heating points, which provide those in need with an opportunity to get out of the cold while enjoying tea or watching a movie. Quote, little by little, the people are coming. In Finland, Luxembourg, they were already warming up yesterday. The film program is up to February. I think that means that they have scheduled movies daily all the way up through February. According to a spokesperson in Russian media, as the energy crisis continues in the European Union, exacerbated by anti-Russian sanctions and a sharp decrease in Russian energy supplies, Rossotrudnichtvo said Friday. It added that, quote, human warmth from Russia and its traditional hospitality is what, quote, freezing human European families need.
Wow.
It's not just good trolling, it's good humanitarianism, right? I mean, they're not wrong. If they want to reach the hearts of the people of Europe, right? If they want to win what is the word I'm looking for? Win the war for the hearts of Europe, then little gestures like this
But will it, though?
help.
I mean, it could be the opposite of that intended result, and I don't know what their real intentions are here. If it's anything more than just trolling, because couldn't it also Colden?
It's a lot of money for just trolling. It could be
Not
that
to the
they're
Russian
doing
government.
a little bit of humanitarian work. Like, they don't have to play them a movie.
Okay, well, that doesn't cost anything extra. Like, it's not a lot of money for them. They have RT, which must cost tens of millions of dollars to produce every single year. It's available across the entire planet. These people have a very diverse sort of national, or rather international, propaganda arm, and this is just kind of part of that, right? So, but it could also piss people off. Like if you are freezing in Europe and you see the Russians are bragging because they've got this, warm place.
You should be mad at your government.
You should be, but some people are going to get mad at the Russians for that.
But you could just go to the heating center.
Yeah, if you just don't go and don't bring your family there just because you're mad at Russia, then you're a bad parent.
Jerk.
And you're
That's
a jerk.
True.
I'm not convinced it's just trolling. I'm not convinced that anything out there is just trolling. And if someone does do something that is nothing more than trolling, then they're bad at trolling.
Here's another quote. You're going to like this one. This is from the head of the agency, Evgeny Primakov. Quote, "Europeans, do not freeze because of your stupid and evil leaders. If your children are wrapped in jackets at home and you have started to save heavily on electricity because Ursula, Olaf, and Emmanuel gave away your money for weapons for the Ukrainian Nazis, come and warm up in our cultural centers in your capitals," he wrote on Telegram.
Wow.
More coming up here. Hour number 3 is on the way. It is Free Talk Live. Gold and silver. You can own the most stable assets in recorded history with BullionMax.com. Buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals shipped fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live can get you their silver starter kit at employee pricing. Just go to BullionMax.com/FTL. It includes 5 ounces of the most desirable silver products plus a free gold bag. This offer is limited to 1 per household, so get yours now. Go to BullionMax.com/FTL.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. President Joe Biden has spoken with Brazilian President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the White House has confirmed. During the call, he congratulated his counterpart's victory over Jair Bolsonaro, the first sitting president of Brazil to lose a re-election bid. FSN's Benji Heyer reports.
President Biden was quick to offer his congratulations following Lula's narrow win announced on Sunday, commending the strength, he says, of Brazilian democratic institutions following what he called free, fair and credible elections, to signal perhaps to incumbent Jair Bolsonaro's allies that they should not dismiss the result. Mr. Biden and the soon-to-be leader of the world's 5th biggest country, in their phone call on Monday, discussed the strong relationship between the US and Brazil and committed to continue working as partners to address common challenges, including combating climate change, safeguarding food security, and promoting democracy. Unlike in many other South American nations, the United States is on the whole viewed positively in Brazil. Benji Heyer, Washington, D.C.
Federal prosecutors have charged the man accused of attacking the husband of U.S. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi with a hammer at the couple's San Francisco home. The criminal complaint includes new allegations about the assault, including that the suspect threatened to break Nancy Pelosi's kneecaps if she lied under questioning. The Democratic congresswoman was in Washington, D.C. when 42-year-old David DePape is accused of breaking into her home in the middle of the night and confronting her husband, Paul Pelosi, who was sleeping. Police found zip ties as well as tape and gloves that DePape had brought with him. The Justice Department has charged DePape with assaulting the family member and attempted kidnapping of a federal official. That's in addition to separate charges filed by the state of California. The incident has raised concern about the safety of U.S. elected officials ahead of next week's midterm elections. And U.S. stocks slipped on Monday ahead of a busy week. Investors are gearing up for the central bank to unveil its latest round of interest rate hikes as it tries to control inflation. FSN's Gabrielle Fahmy reports from New York.
Despite stocks losing steam on Monday, markets closed the month higher after a bloody September. The Nasdaq rose 4% for the month, the S&P 500 8%, and the biggest winner was the Dow Jones, shooting up as much as 14%, making October one of its best months on record. Traders are expecting another 75 basis point interest rate hike when the Federal Reserve meets this week. But many think the central bank will signal the end of its aggressive hikes after that. In oil markets, Texas crude fell to $86 a barrel after President Joe Biden signaled he wanted to tax big oil.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at the state of the world's climate ahead of the COP27 climate change summit that convenes in Egypt next Sunday. The UN is warning of a global catastrophe because so little progress has again been made by governments in the fight against global warming.
We've lost time. We can still act, and we have to act quickly.
Sir David King heads the Climate Crisis Advocacy Group and is a former UK government special representative on climate change.
What is happening on the ground is much worse than the climate scientific community were predicting. The Arctic Circle region has now heated up to 3 degrees centigrade above the pre-industrial level, much more double than the 1.5 average for the rest of the planet. Greenland sits in the Arctic Circle, and as Greenland ice melts, global sea levels will rise by 7 meters. If we look at what is happening in the permafrost regions around the North Pole, there's enough methane trapped up there that if it was all released in 20 years, temperatures would rise 5 to 8 degrees centigrade. These several disasters is what will happen, and it will trigger other tipping points to go.
And he is very critical of UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's decision not to travel to Egypt for COP27. President Biden will be there. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. The White House confirms that U.S. President Biden has spoken with Brazilian President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Federal prosecutors charged the man accused of attacking the husband of U.S. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. And U.S. stocks slip ahead of a busy week as investors gear up for more possible rate hikes. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer reporting.
The Onion looks back at This Week in History. On July 21st, 2007, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the final installment in the widely popular Harry Potter series, was released, as excited fans all over the world eagerly flipped to the book's final pages to find out if Harry and Lord Voldemort finally
Author J.K. Rowling had already succeeded in creating one of the most popular literary franchises of all time. And of course, much of that success was owed to the expertly crafted sexual tension that steadily built up between the series' protagonist, schoolboy wizard Harry Potter, and the Dark Lord Voldemort. Everyone in the country wanted to know whether or not they would and if they did how many times would they and who would be who.
And that was what happened this week in history. In the words of Mother Teresa, if there is one lesson to learn from the past, it's that no matter what you do, there will always be a bunch more crippled dying kids.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open, and you can join us here as we kick off the third hour of the show. Show. Ian, Bonnie, Aria here. You can join us at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We were talking about some of the Russian trolling that has been going on, with the examples being the new heating points that have opened up in a couple of European cities to allow people to warm up, as they're going to be likely colder than they've been in many decades.
And I mean, that's the best kind of trolling, when you can present it as just a genuine act of kindness, but you're trolling while you do it. That's like when the Reformed Satanic Church donated $50 to Carla Garrick as a sign of good faith because she was upset with me. The Porcupine Freedom Festival declined a donation from the Reformed Satanic Church. We wanted to donate to the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
This is the Free State Project's yearly summer camping festival.
Yes. And the donation was rejected in sort of a condescending way, saying, like, ha, 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 that's very funny, whatever. But as a sign
You were
of...
serious.
Yes, I was completely serious. And I would still do it to this day. Well, I couldn't do it at this exact moment, but in theory, I would still do it to this day. But as a sign of good faith and as a token of forgiveness, the Reformed Satanic Church then donated $50 to Carla, to the Senate campaign of who was then heading up the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And it was a sign of good faith and, saying, look, we're not holding this against you. We're still friends. Everything's still good. But, I can't deny that it was also trolling. I mean, yep. And that's the best kind of trolling. It's when you can do something that's passive-aggressive like that, but it's also just genuinely nice.
It can't be seen as bad.
Right. It's like it's like challenging them to be upset about this nice thing that you've done. Like we see out of Russia right here. It's like, here's an act of kindness. We can...
The heating points.
Yeah, we're going to let the people of Europe here go there to warm up. We dare you to get mad at us about this.
On the other hand, the channel that somebody put on Twitch is back, by the way. It apparently had been banned, and then there was a large outrage. When it was banned, they created a second channel and just kept doing it there. But then I guess there was enough pushback by viewers or Twitch fans that said, hey, leave this person alone. Twitch undid it. They even cite when they were unbanned. Apparently, it was just 4 days ago.
The only thing I can see that would be bannable about it is the Jesus-like picture of Putin.
Yeah, they've got Putin with like a large light underneath him, so he's lit from below.
I thought it was like candlelight.
It would probably be too dangerous if it was a candle.
It gives you like a religious imagery, worship Putin type vibe.
So.
Not that should actually be banned, but I feel like if it was banned, that's probably what they would have used the excuse for, but they probably couldn't excuse it.
But yeah, it's just a 24-hour feed of one stove burner with a gas stove constantly lit. There appears to be some sort of a device. I don't know what this thing is. There's like a incrementing LCD number. It's at number 298 right now.
That's what I was going to ask. Is it incrementing how many gallons of oil or natural gas or whatever have been burned?
I think it might be 29.8 degrees Celsius would be the temperature in the kitchen.
Okay.
That's fairly warm, as I understand it. I remember being in Mexico, and it was like a 27-degree day. It was pretty nice in Mexico. So
see, Celsius
30.
is useless. It's good for a lot of things, but as far as measuring the comfort of a room, it's useless for that purpose.
Useful to the people in Europe.
Yeah, but Fahrenheit is so much better.
Why?
Because it has a wider range in that critical... It has a wider range in that critically important range, whereas Celsius is like 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. That's guesstimating here. That's what comfortable room temperatures for humans.
I think that the people in Europe and Mexico and the rest of the world would say that it's totally fine.
Yeah, but we have 60 to 90 degrees. We have a much wider range where we can be precise about exactly how warm a room is.
Like when somebody says, it hit 100 degrees outside. You realize, like, even a little kid would be like, well, that's a big number. But if you say, it hit 45 degrees outside, just sounds not as...
In Celsius, it's 37.7 degrees.
Is 100
degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, it sounds like nothing. It's like, is that out of 100? Like, if you didn't know anything on Earth, but you somehow spoke English, and somebody was like, it's 37.5 Celsius outside, can you believe that? Wouldn't you just be like, is that a lot? But if someone said 100, it seems like even if you didn't know Celsius or Fahrenheit, you'd be like, whoa.
I don't even think it's about the the bigness of the numbers. I think it's just, room temperature in Celsius is a range of like 3, 4, maybe 5 degrees at the most.
Do they use points? Oh,
Yes.
yeah, you said that.
Yeah.
But whereas in Fahrenheit it's 25 to 30 degrees. It's a much wider range because there's a huge difference between 62 degrees.
But it's just digits. You just take the decimal point into consideration.
It is, right? But
you guys sound like ethnocentric Americans to me right now.
It's not about being ethnocentric. It's just about being raised a certain way.
All I said was some things are better when measured in Fahrenheit, and room temperature is one of those things.
Yeah, like boiling water in Celsius is 100 degrees. That makes sense.
Right, that makes sense.
And zero, I think, is freezing.
0.
But
So that
and
makes
it's so
sense, too.
confusing for I almost said English. For Fahrenheit is 32 is freezing and boiling is like 400 something.
I think it's 200.
Yeah, but having the boiling and freezing temperature of water being 0 and 100 of your measurement system, that's stupid in the first place because it depends on elevation and air pressure and all of these other things that
And it's
aren't
something you talk about.
universally true.
You don't talk about boiling water temperatures as much as you talk about the temperature it is outside.
We're going to continue here. We've got Sarah. She's on the line with us in New Mexico. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yes, so we're building that. I think it's called the Opportunity Center. It's a new homeless shelter. And it's a former hospital turned into a homeless shelter. But my biggest concern is I want the men and women to be separated. I'm hoping they have a separate entrance.
Well, since you're building it, you should be able to build a separate entrance and a woman's quarters,
Yeah,
right?
how many bricks have you laid?
Well, just that they want to hear from the homeless people themselves, and then they wanted a movie night or they want a community room.
They should go to the warming center, the Russian heating points. They've got movie nights.
Well, I'm bringing this up because the homeless women are like the biggest point for the pimps to pimp.
In fact, why don't you go to Russia?
I was about to say, if I was a homeless person and I was just dedicated to welfare, I would not be in America. I'd be in Europe.
Well, but they're gonna build a homeless shelter.
They have better welfare in Europe.
Wait, I thought they were taking over the jail.
No, it's a hospital.
No. The jail don't have a laundry facility. It doesn't have a kitchen. So it's the hospital has a full cafeteria and they have a laundry washing facility. So that's the one that it's like a code, like livable code, building code.
Oh, okay.
So did they give up on the jail that they were converting to a homeless shelter?
Well, it was so horrible. Nobody really wanted to stay out there.
Oh, so
The
they
homeless
did.
people
So wait. You're saying they did actually convert a jail to a homeless shelter,
But they were like bunks with no ladders and,
and people
stuff.
were falling off the bunk beds because they're drunk.
Yeah, right. And then they say, well, we're afraid of. I want you to get.
How many millions of dollars did they spend renovating this jail and turning it into a homeless shelter before just junking the entire project?
I really probably up in the millions. I think they spent $1 billion.
It's nice when it's not your money. Did you say $1 billion?
I think she said $1 million.
Just to get them out there. It's like 10 miles out of town. People said, I want them away from me, 11 miles out of town. So like 3 times a day, they would pick them up, bring them back, pick them up, bring them. They don't want them around.
Sarah, in regard to this new homeless shelter, is your only concern here whether or not men and women are going to have a separate interest? I mean, why is that the issue that you've picked to focus on?
Okay, look, I mean, I have been a homeless woman in my 20s, and I have been the target of sexual exploitation from the pimps and the Johns, everybody. That just because you're a homeless woman, they think they're entitled to use you for sex. You know what? And that's my biggest concern.
It sounds like you could have had a job.
Thanks for the call tonight, Sarah. The number here is 603-283-6160. You can bring up absolutely anything that you want, and you can take control of the airwaves here on Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 15th through the 18th for the 7th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out in 2022. For 2023, we're going back to where it all started, the weekend before PorcFest. ForkFest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 15th through the 18th. You can find out more at the unofficial website forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 15th through the 18th. Forkfest.party. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Welcome to the program here. The phones are open. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Coming up here, Bonnie, you wanted to get into some COVID-related stuff. We haven't done a lot of COVID coverage, thankfully, in recent months. However, there's been some news. There's an opinion piece that you spotted today, Bonnie, and you wanted to share with us. It's by somebody who's begging for forgiveness for their viewpoints during COVID, as I understand it. I have not read this piece, but they want quote-unquote amnesty, apparently.
Yep, it says we need to forgive each other for what we did and said when we were in the dark about COVID.
I'm willing to forgive. I mean, I think it's good, and I think that's the best way for us all to heal and come together and move forward, and a little bit better than we were 2 years ago.
I believe in forgiveness. I absolutely do. But are they actually sorry, this person?
To me, it doesn't matter. I'm willing to forgive them whether they're sorry or not.
I agree with you.
I'm more curious about whether or not they've actually learned their lesson.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say it's less about being sorry and more about the conclusion they've come to. Because if they just say, okay, don't be mad at me, and you're like, okay, I won't be mad at you, but they don't actually change their behavior, they haven't actually learned, oh, we probably shouldn't just follow what the news says and then attack our neighbors.
Right. Meaning that in the future, they won't just immediately do whatever it is the government tells them to.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen, but
that would be ideal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to forgive them regardless.
That's right, because forgiveness is about you.
Right. And to me, it does me no good to hold this against my fellow human beings. Yes, they made a bad decision. They were monsters. Many of them were outright evil. They were misguided. And I'm willing to move on from that. I must move on from that.
Yeah. You
because,
can't let it own you. And there's a difference between forgiveness and understanding what to expect in the future, right? Like you can forgive somebody for their behavior, but it doesn't mean like if they ripped you off or something like that you loaned them some money and they stole it from you and they're not making any effort to pay it back. Well, you can forgive them, but you know better next time to not give them money again, right?
Or you could just stop being their friend. That doesn't mean you didn't forgive them.
Yeah, that's true as well. So it's important to take a lesson away from this about people's behavior and what to expect from them. So for instance, now I expect mass obedience. I expect very, very little resistance to these mass government lockdowns and mandates and whatever it is that they decide to try to put people through over climate change next or whatever the next big mass psychosis event happens to be. So I know it to be realistic about. It changed my perspective on how likely people were to care about freedom. I previously had thought that maybe people actually were interested in freedom to some extent, and no, many of them aren't even interested in their own freedom. I mean, at the very least, you could say, some people only want themselves to be free, but they don't care about others' freedom. In many cases, it just seemed like people were willing to do everything they were told lock, stock, and barrel from these government agents. And that was a real eye-opener for me and supremely disappointing.
And for me, it made me change my approach. Like, instead of going from, I became a libertarian when I lived in Utah, and I was just like, I can't live here. It's too bad, and it's hopeless. I'm going to go to the place that's the most free, quote-unquote, in my mind at the time, and just live like a normal life there. I'm not going to be an activist or anything like that. Just at least I'll be basically free. And that's why I went to Texas. And then, well, in Texas, 2020 happened, and everybody closed down. My life just ended, and I was like, whoa, what do I do now? Like, is the whole world like just like this? Is this just what the world is like for the rest of my life now? And I looked into it, found out about New Hampshire and the freedom migration, and seemed like a better chance for me to come here instead of just thinking that was about as good as I was going to get in Texas. So it made me change that, like, instead of just forgiving them and being like, I'm just going to live in their
world.
Gunk, which is a city in the United States, is living in their gunk. I'm going to get out of that for myself.
And be with other people who understand that.
Yep.
And things certainly weren't perfect here in New Hampshire, not by any means. The lockdown here did happen. It was
Quote,
a short
unquote,
period.
Stay at home.
Yes. It lasted for, I think, 2 months here, which was 2 months too many. But the soft lockdown that continued after that hung around a lot longer. The mask mandates held around a lot longer than they should have. New Hampshire was not perfect by any means, but people across the board were horrific to one another. And this is on all sides, right? I'm not exempting the libertarians and the people who didn't want to wear masks or the anti-COVID lockdown people. Many of them were just as horrible in different directions and treated people who did want to wear masks as though they were just evil, horrific scum refusing to work with one another. Both sides forgot how to see humanity in each other. And I think that's where everyone went wrong. And I'm willing to forgive people for that because I still see the humanity in them. And to me, as long as you're a human, you're worth forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't see it that way. They stopped seeing humanity in each other. And I think that's where they went wrong.
Well, it was easy to, I agree with you. That is definitely where some people on the freedom, quote unquote, side went wrong. But it was easy to dehumanize people when their faces were covered, right? So
Certainly.
To some extent. I'm not blaming them for it, but you could argue they did it to themselves by literally dehumanizing themselves. You could not even see expressions on people's faces, and that actually contributed to, I think, some of this nastiness on both sides, where you would have.
It's like the internet, like how you can't actually see someone's face on the internet, so people are way more nasty.
But in real life. And so you started seeing it in like stores, like you'd be in a Walmart or something like that. And the employee was hidden behind a mask.
And maybe like somebody cough at someone wearing a mask, like that's rude. Like if you're mad at somebody for making a comment to you because you're not wearing masks, so you cough at them.
That's definitely rude.
Yeah.
But the thing I was going to say is the person behind the mask, the store employee, they were being less friendly than they otherwise would be. Normally, I mean, you could say, oh, well, you don't ever get good service in a Walmart. But that said, there's, at least in my experience up here, is you're more likely to have an employee smile at you or say hello or something like that. Hey, do you need help with something?
Well, they have the moral superiority, like, I'm doing the right thing, you're doing the wrong thing right now. I'm only tolerating you because I have to.
Well, there were some people who were like that, right? There were certainly some people who got off on it and who felt like they were morally superior to others simply because they wore the mask or whatever. I'm not sure how common that was.
Like from my own experience, I'd say like almost everyone who was working and wearing a mask.
I think there were multiple
my friends and stuff.
I think there were multiple things going on. I think the much bigger one was that people in general were ruder to retail and food employees or retail and service employees.
Because the people were also in a mask.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for the first time in their lives, people in retail and service were allowed to stand their ground and tell people, no, screw you, I'm not putting up with your crap today. The customer isn't always right.
Yeah, but somebody doing that to me for just walking in the store, seeing if I can go in without a mask instead of like doing anything rude to the employee isn't justified. Or
there's more coming up here. The number is 603-283-6160. Well, now somebody is saying they want amnesty for being an uninformed jerk, is what it sounds like. We'll get into the story coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. President Joe Biden has spoken with Brazilian President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the White House has confirmed. During the call, he congratulated his counterpart's victory over Jair Bolsonaro, the first sitting president of Brazil to lose a re-election bid. FSN's Benji Heyer reports.
President Biden was quick to offer his congratulations following Lula's narrow win announced on Sunday, commending the strength, he says, of Brazilian democratic institutions following what he called free, fair and credible elections, to signal perhaps to incumbent Jair Bolsonaro's allies that they should not dismiss the result. Mr. Biden and the soon-to-be leader of the world's fifth biggest country, in their phone call on Monday, discussed the strong relationship between the US and Brazil and committed to continue working as partners to address common challenges, including combating climate change, safeguarding food security, and promoting democracy. Unlike in many other South American nations, the United States is on the whole viewed positively in Brazil. Benji Haya, Washington, D.C.
Federal prosecutors have charged the man accused of attacking the husband of U.S. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi with a hammer at the couple's San Francisco home. The criminal complaint includes new allegations about the assault, including that the suspect threatened to break Nancy Pelosi's kneecaps if she lied under questioning. The Democratic congresswoman was in Washington, D.C. when 42-year-old David DePape is accused of breaking into her home in the middle of the night and confronting her husband, Paul Pelosi, who was sleeping. Police found zip ties as well as tape and gloves that DePape had brought with him. The Justice Department has charged DePape with assaulting the family member and attempted kidnapping of a federal official. That's in addition to separate charges filed by the state of California. The incident has raised concern about the safety of U.S. elected officials ahead of next week's midterm elections. And U.S. stocks slipped on Monday ahead of a busy week. Investors are gearing up for the central bank to unveil its latest round of interest rate hikes as it tries to control inflation. FSN's Gabrielle Fahmy reports from New York.
Despite stocks losing steam on Monday, markets closed the month higher after a bloody September. The Nasdaq rose 4% for the month, the S&P 500 8%, and the biggest winner was the Dow Jones, shooting up as much as 14%, making October one of its best months on record. Traders are expecting another 75 basis point interest rate hike when the Federal Reserve meets this week. But many think the central bank will signal the end of its aggressive hikes after that. In oil markets, Texas crude fell to $86 a barrel after President Joe Biden signaled he wanted to tax big oil.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Talk Live, and you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Aria.
Don't forget, you can join us online. Just head over to freetalklive.com. Enjoy the features that we have there for you. And you can join us online and check out, for instance, our social media platform at social.freetalklive.com. You can follow us on our Odyssey video channel at video.freetalklive.com. And speaking of videos, the Ballad of the Crypto 6 fundraiser has gone over 50% thanks to a big Bitcoiner, I guess, who stepped up. I believe it was XBT3D was his Twitter handle, if I recall correctly. So thank you to those people. I'm not the person behind this documentary. It's an independent group of filmmakers based out of Mexico that is doing this documentary, and they're trying to raise basically $60,000 to make this possible, because it's not cheap to make a feature-length documentary film. And thanks to a couple of very generous donors, they are over the 50% point. So that's very, very exciting. I would love to see this thing get made. But if people don't want to see it get made, then it won't get made. If they do want to see it get made, then it'll happen. So it's in the hands of the people. Are they going to make
something? Because if they've gotten like half the funds raised at this point, it seems like they could. I don't know. Maybe if they don't raise the amount of money, that like scale the project back a little bit.
Yeah, I would hope that they would, because $30,000 sounds like a lot of money to me. But yeah. I don't know. I guess we'll see how it goes. They've still got another 19 days to get to the end goal on this thing, and you can donate at balladofthecrypto6 with the numeral 6.com. There's an Indiegogo there for those of you that prefer credit cards and that sort of thing. But if you reach out directly to the organizers, they've got a Twitter account, for instance, and I'm sure there's a contact section on the website, balladofthecrypto6.com. You can go there and reach out to them directly if you have Bitcoin that you want to donate, instead of going through Indiegogo. Indiegogo takes 10% or something like that. So if you want to if you want more of your donation to end up in the hands of the actual filmmakers, going with crypto as a donation option is probably the best bet. In fact, I think the majority of donation at this point has come in Bitcoin. If you go to the Indiegogo fundraiser, it's over 23% there. It's 23%. So they posted recently that it was over 50% when they include the Bitcoin that's been donated. So thank you to everybody that has contributed to this. I'm excited to see it. There's a 9-minute long teaser trailer there that you can watch and get a feel for what the documentary might end up being like. It's Ballad of the Crypto 6 with the numeral 6.com. So, Bonnie, let's jump into this story here that you have from The Atlantic. Is that right?
Yep. It says, let's declare a pandemic amnesty. We need to forgive one another for what we did and said when we were in the dark about COVID.
And I mean, I'm good with that. I don't think amnesty is necessarily the right word, because I'm not sure. I'm just not sure it's the right word.
All right.
He starts off explaining that in April 2022, him and his wife would take hikes, and they were really serious about wearing the masks, and they would...
in 2022?
Oh, sorry, April 2020.
Okay.
They would hand signal to each other if someone else was passing them on the trail, and they had to put their masks on. His 4-year-old son would yell at another child that got too close to them, social distancing.
Oh, God.
So they drank the Kool-Aid.
Sure.
They were fully propagandized.
Propagandized,
yeah.
Yes, thank you. And they were spreading that to, how old was their child? Did it say?
4-year-old son.
Oh, they traumatized this 4-year-old to the extent. Remember the one we read about who said, ooh, people, or whatever, when they saw people approaching down the sidewalk?
Oh,
yes.
no, people, something like that. Yeah.
And now this social distancing, dude. I don't believe in smacking people, but I would have a hard time not smacking your kid. Dude,
He yelled it at another kid, I would be like, smack him.
Good, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't encourage violence
probably
either.
not,
Smacking children does not help their development.
No, and obviously we're
and
we're
neither
being
does putting
facetious.
a mask on them either. I consider them both to be a form of abuse.
Yes, but I would at least be like, hey, dude, teach your kid that not minding their own business is a bad way to live.
But that's the thing. This was all about getting into other people's business.
It was.
They had this moral view that, oh, well, if you don't do what I'm doing, then you don't care about people. Let's hear the
Luckily, the next sentence is, he says, these precautions were totally misguided.
Wow.
In April 2020, no one got the coronavirus from passing someone else hiking. Whoa, someone's saying this in actual media.
2 years later, but okay. Better late than never.
Outdoor transmission was vanishingly rare. Our cloth masks made out of old bandanas wouldn't have done anything anyway. But the thing is, we didn't know. Even though there was like decades of research, but whatever.
And even though the masks themselves did say on the box that they don't protect from COVID.
He's talking about not even that kind, like just a bandana cloth.
Right. Well, whatever type we're talking about here, there was plenty of information for anyone who wanted to look at it.
But then,
about
they
these
were
masks.
being told by people, ignore that stuff.
Right.
It works. So I'm just going to give them that. They didn't know. I'm just going to give them that they
were
didn't know.
willfully ignorant. They did not bother to research the other side. They were being told things, and they didn't look for another opinion.
But he's willing to admit that they didn't know, so why treat other people so disrespectfully and so horrifically on what is nothing more than just an assumption?
Because they were certain. They were told by the authorities.
He says, I have been reflecting on this lack of knowledge thanks to a class I'm co-teaching at Brown University on COVID. We've spent several lectures reliving the first year of the pandemic, discussing the many important choices we had to make under the conditions of tremendous uncertainty. Some of these choices turned out better than others. To take an example close to my own work, there is an emerging, if not universal, consensus that schools in the U.S. were closed for too long. The health risks of in-school spread were relatively low.
They should have closed them forever.
I mean, now the CDC is trying to recommend that all kids in all public schools
have to get
vaccinated.
It's
so
not
it doesn't
over yet.
seem like the consensus has really been reached.
Well, they wanted to add it to the list of recommended vaccines for children or something like. I don't know exactly how the vaccine
Basically, if a
thing
school
works.
is going to get federal money, they have to accept this vaccine schedule.
Okay.
And if you want to send your kid to the school, then you have to get the vaccine or get some sort of exemption for it, or don't send your kid to the school.
And many states don't allow exemptions at all. Some of them only allow religious exemptions. Some of them allow.
Yeah.
Like, I think the state of Mississippi doesn't allow any exemptions. I don't recall now.
The best thing you can do is get your kids out of these schools.
Absolutely.
It's the only solution.
Homeschool them.
Yeah.
Well, they explain that the latest figures on learning loss are alarming as far as the amount of loss of learning people had for not going to school those years. It says, but in spring and summer 2020, we only had glimmers of information. Reasonable people who cared about children and teachers advocated on both sides of the reopening debate. Which is shocking. They're even saying that now.
They didn't seem very reasonable. I will say that at that time, because this group was literally calling the unmasked manslaughterers, murderers, things like that. I mean, the amount of vitriol was absolutely detestable.
Yeah, they were not at all reasonable.
No.
It's not reasonable to call someone a manslaughterer because they dress in a way that you don't approve of.
They say another example, when the vaccines came out, we lacked definitive data on the relative efficacies of the Johnson & Johnson shot versus the mRNA options from Pfizer and Moderna. The mRNA vaccines have won out, but at the time, many people in public health were either neutral or expressed a J&J preference. This misstep wasn't nefarious, it was the result of uncertainty. And you're uncertain if your vaccines have not been tested for the normal amount of time, so...
Yeah, this is also one of the most minor pieces of the puzzle yet. Which one of these vaccines is really better?
Yeah, he's still obviously sold on vaccinations, which is what you would expect. But we'll continue. There's more to this story here in moments. The number 603-283-6160. You can share your thoughts. Are you ready to forgive? This is Free Talk Live. Do you prefer to listen to Free Talk Live on your schedule on demand? You can find the link to our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com, which features the daily digest of our radio show 7 days a week. Just drop our RSS feed into your favorite podcast client or subscribe to us on the large platforms if you prefer, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartMedia, Spotify, and Stitcher. All the links are at feeds.freetalklive.com. If the daily digests aren't enough for you and you really don't want to miss a moment of Free Talk Live, you can always sign up for our AMPS Patreon at amps.freetalklive.com for just $5 a month, and you'll get the full radio show without recorded commercials. Plus, you'll help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. That's amps.freetalklive.com to join AMPS, or feeds.freetalklive.com to get our main podcast, or find us on the major podcast platforms. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Yes, it's Free Talk Live. The phones are open. We're talking about some people who have changed their tune since the COVID crackdowns and lockdowns in 2020, and now they are asking for amnesty or forgiveness or something. We're going to continue with Bonnie's story here, and of course you can join us online anytime over at freetalklive.com. Do enjoy the features that we have waiting for you on the site. Once again, that is freetalklive.com. And I do want to say thank you to Dale, who is a Free Talk Live supporter of our AMPS program. You can go to amps.freetalklive.com. That's amps.freetalklive.com, and you can help support Free Talk Live there by joining via PayPal or directly with credit card or debit card. You get some cool perks and some benefits from doing that over at amps.freetalklive.com. And one of those perks is you get access to the AMP-only podcast, which has the full radio show of Free Talk Live without any of those pesky recorded ads. So enjoy that and more over at amps.freetalklive.com. We go to Major Payne on the line in Michigan. Go ahead, Major.
Hey, good evening.
Yes, sir.
This has got to do with China.
Mm-hmm.
If you took your family to Disneyland in Shanghai on Sunday and weren't out of there by 11:30, I think it was. I don't know if it was AM or PM. You are now in a prison camp of Disneyland.
Yep, that's right. I've got that news story.
Do we at least get to stay in like the resorts?
There was 10 cases. Evidently, they were screening people on the way in, and it took them a while to get through the screenings, and they found 10 positive cases, so they locked.
They locked the entire park down, and now you have to test negative in order to be released from Disney World.
I'm surprised they're letting people leave at all. I mean, since the beginning of the COVID-19, quote, pandemic, China's zero tolerance policy, or whatever they're calling zero COVID policy, has been alarmingly, terrifyingly restrictive, where entire cities would get locked down over single digits cases. So,
and you can be trapped anywhere: grocery store, shopping mall,
your
and
apartment.
Disneyland.
I wonder if they're gonna, like the people that went around in the white suits spraying people and locking them in their houses and stuff. I wonder if they're gonna come out with something saying we want amnesty and forgiveness.
I'm just imagining Mickey Mouse or Pluto with one of those spraying devices going around,
the
just
mask,
hosing people down with whatever the hell that fume gas is that they're hitting people with.
It can't be healthy.
No.
Being as how they unleashed the beast, I think they know how out of control it is, and they don't know. They're scared of what the Frankenstein they created.
It's nothing. It's a cold. There's nothing to be afraid of unless you're a morbidly obese, highly ill individual who's like, if you're on death's door, okay, this might push you over. But otherwise, most people, even octogenarians who are in good health, are going to beat this thing.
And it's not a crazy, like, newfangled thing to say, because nobody was walking around just terrified of getting the flu in their 30s.
Even though it could kill you.
Yeah, but it could kill you.
Right.
Like, you had a small chance of dying from the flu if you were healthy and in your 20s or 30s as well, like the whole time I've been alive. But nobody walked around terrified of that, wearing masks and being rude to their friends and family.
Thanks for bringing that story up, Major. Appreciate it, man. The number here is 603-283-6160. I did have that in my show prep. It's definitely a crazy story. But let's get back into this opinion piece here from The Atlantic, Bonnie, that you were sharing with us.
They were talking about some examples of things that people did, but they just didn't have enough information at the time, so we should forgive them. But they go on, they say, obviously some people intended to mislead and made wildly irresponsible claims.
Yes, like Dr. Fauci.
Yep.
Joe Biden, Donald Trump.
Everybody on
Everyone in the
media, yeah. Remember when the public health community had to spend a lot of time and resources urging Americans not to inject themselves with bleach?
No, I don't remember that. I remember when the media took Donald Trump's words out of context
When
and
he was
started
joking?
Yeah, well, he didn't even say that. He was like, they have sanitizers and things like that where they can sanitize people's bodies. I don't remember exactly how he put it.
He said like light they've discovered that light sanitizes you from the inside.
But never under any circumstance did Donald Trump or anyone else say anything about drinking bleach. But that didn't stop the media and the people out there, Donald Trump thinks you should drink bleach.
Well, this is so like misleading. This lady is being misleading, or I found out it was a lady that wrote this, is being extremely misleading just by saying that. All she says is that was bad. Misinformation was and remains a huge problem.
So stop spreading it.
She literally did in this paragraph where she's talking about misinformation.
Yeah, the misinformation was that Donald Trump suggested people drink bleach. He never said anything along those lines.
I remember reading multiple fear-mongering pieces from this very publication during 2020. It was one of the loudest calls for total lockdown, total control.
The Atlantic?
Yeah.
Goes on, but most errors were made by people who were working in earnest for the good of society. Given the amount of uncertainty, almost every position was taken on every topic, and on every topic, someone was equally proved right and someone else was proved wrong. In some instances, the right people were right for the wrong reasons. In other instances, they had a prescient understanding of the available information.
Right for the wrong reasons? Is that what he said? Or wrong for the right reasons?
Both, I think.
Okay. To me, it's a useless platitude, but I understand why they would want to throw it out there. It just sounds smart.
The people who got it right for whatever reason may want to gloat. Those who got it wrong for whatever reason may feel defensive and retrench into a position that doesn't accord with the facts.
We got it right.
True.
I don't want to gloat over it, but we got it right because we withheld judgment. That was what caused us to get it right. We didn't rush off and start panicking, making decisions because we were panicking and had to do something.
It's like I have to do the thing that my party is doing. I have to be masky, not because of the facts, but because the Democrats are being. I don't want to look like a Republican, and that's why I'm going to wear a mask. You know, people weren't making decisions based on the facts at all, period.
It was absolutely a political thing because you could see that when the Democrats were against the vaccine when Trump was in office and then became pro-vaccine as soon as Biden took office.
Yep.
That happened. There are many screenshots proving multiple Democrats.
Yeah, there's an entire Twitter account dedicated to it.
Defiant L's, I think, was that account.
All of this gloating and defensiveness continues to gobble up a lot of social energy and to drive the culture wars, especially on the internet. These discussions are heated, unpleasant, and ultimately unproductive. In the face,
yes, it is unpleasant to realize you were wrong about something. That is absolutely an unpleasant feeling.
Yes, but it's important to realize it, to recognize it, and to move on.
Yes.
It's just like she wasn't writing something like this on The Atlantic when people were just being extremely hateful towards people who were just making decisions like to not get vaccinated, to not wear masks or whatever. She wasn't writing like, oh, these discussions are not helpful and heated and
some of them were saying
unpleasant.
they wanted us to die.
Yep.
Many of them said that.
Yep.
A girl who
like
became
in newspaper articles, not just like somebody on the internet.
Yep.
Well, they had to, because if we didn't die, which we didn't, by the way, it proved them wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Our very existence, our lives continues to prove them wrong and show them how terribly wrong they actually were. They needed us to die, and we didn't.
To justify their beliefs.
At least the people who didn't want to get vaccinated weren't hoping. Oh, well, actually, a lot of them were. There were definitely a lot of people that I saw, like, not outright hoping, but saying that they know that the people who took the vaccine were going to die. That wasn't right either. These discussions are heated. In the face of so much uncertainty, getting something right had a hefty element of luck. Oh my God. And similarly, getting something wrong wasn't a moral failing. Treating pandemic choices as a scorecard on which some people racked up more points than others is preventing us from moving forward.
Hold on, this person just chalked up people who got things right to simple luck?
Yep, not people who are looking at the facts and looking at the way the world has always been and the way the immune system functions.
Right, or talking to a doctor who had a different opinion, because that's like what you do with doctors, right? Like when there's something wrong with you, you get a second opinion, because not all doctors have the same opinion. They have different beliefs and educations and all that. And so these people just didn't want to hear any other opinions.
And then she goes on to say, look, and it doesn't even matter who was right and who's wrong. This isn't a scorecard, okay? Who's keeping score? What a lunatic.
Let me finish with this from some Twitter discussion. Some lady says, my now 38-year-old husband was just told by his cardiologist that his benign myocarditis reaction from the Moderna vaccine is now a chronic heart condition. 20% chance of living the next 9 years, doubled his cholecine, whatever that is. Somebody else says, would him receiving COVID and spreading the disease be a better alternative?
Wow.
And she says, he still got COVID, moron.
Wow.
See you tomorrow.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores,